welcome to another episode of Video Game Logic. Today's episode was recorded on June the 25th, 2019. I'm your host, Gaming Psychologist, and with me, as always, the delightful and delectable
Caffeine Rage.
On today's show, we will of course be discussing the games that we played this week. We're going to be going over our June Game Club, which is Enter the Gungeon. We'll be talking about the Game Club briefly for July, which we've already given to you, Final Fantasy Tactics for the PS1. EA says they're not loot boxes, they're surprise mechanics, and they're quite ethical. We're going to be going into that a bit. NBA 2K19 fans are unhappy at an increase in the number of unskippable ads in-game. We'll have our weekly community corner with something that Jim sent in to us, and a Steam weekly discovery queue. Timestamps will be in the show notes following their respective topics. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
A little tired. Throat's a little bit blah because I dared to go outside. I went and played in traffic today. I went to the ATM. Scared the hell out of a lady that was sitting there texting.
Yeah.
I came up on her. She was parked in the parking lot of the old bank where they have the 24-hour ATM there. It's basically a giant kiosk, and I come up on this SUV, and I see the driver kind of slumped over. And I'm approaching him from the back and thinking, are you dead? Go up, start to nearly tap on the window, and I see, oh, she's on her phone, and start to back away. She turned around and saw me and jumped. I felt a little bad, but a little pleased with myself at the same time because I'm trying to do the right thing, but it's
I can see that from both sides. It's like, because I've done that before. It's like you see somebody and it's like, oh, is that person like okay? And, like, you go check, and then it's like, oh, they are okay. But then it's like you feel kind of bad because, like, oh, I just scared the shit out of that person.
Yeah, it was just one of those things that it's you see someone slumped over, you go go knock on their window, right? That's kind of the normal thing, right?
I would say so. There's probably plenty of people though that would say that we're crazy for going and checking on somebody.
Yeah, that's a good way to get shot, especially in the South.
Yeah, that's true.
But to be fair, I have a lesser chance of that because I'm very white. Yeah.
White in a southern state.
Well, yeah, technically, southern on my part. Well, I'm in that weird gray area.
Yeah. There's still plenty of opportunity to be shot, though.
Yeah.
So, enough with the terribleness that is the southern United States.
Or United States in general, because we were talking politics in the pre-show.
Yeah. How about we talk a little bit about some games that we played this week? We've actually both played all the games we're going to talk about, just at different points to different degrees.
Yeah, so mini Game Club again?
I guess? I don't know.
Well, I haven't played your second one, so.
Yeah, I guess specifically
technically
the DLC part, but you played the base game. Anyways,
let's start off with ASTRONEER. This is a survival base builder, and this is one of those games that it's definitely not for me, I think, but at the same time, I definitely could see where people could invest a lot of time with it. So, ASTRONEER is a procedurally generated set of worlds. You start on this starter planet, essentially easy mode. And you build up a base and launch a rocket, and then you go land on another base and kind of rinse and repeat, or another planet and build up a base again and rinse and repeat. And this is a game that is very heavily slanted towards multiplayer, in my opinion. And trying to play it as single player, there's all the multiplayer mechanics still in place that just kind of brought everything to a halt. So, the first thing that really kind of got to me on ASTRONEER is that your suit has about the worst oxygen supply I've ever seen in any game. I mean, Lara Croft diving underwater could hold her breath longer than this suit could hold oxygen. It's rather amazing how bad it is. And I realize that it is a mechanic designed around kind of creating a branching network of essentially pipelines for life support. But at the same time, it's very frustrating, especially on your own in the very beginning, because in order to build up to the point where you're able to build out and start exploring more, you're kind of like almost free diving and going out, watching your oxygen, trying to, on a desperate bid to find one of a couple resources, composite and resin. And both of them are in decent supply in the starter area, but at the same time, they're extremely frustrating because you need several good chunks of it. And it's not just, oh, well, there's a big field, you grab one and go. No, you have to mine several of them with your essentially dirt gun or dirt vacuum cleaner. And because they're all concentrated, it doesn't take that long, but at the same time, the clock's ticking. And you have, 30 seconds, a minute before you suffocate? It's a very short time.
I'm not 100% sure. I think it's a minute or so. Did you get, the little oxygen that you can collect? Because you can store that in your suit to extend the time.
I did get the filters eventually, but I found those before I had the resources to actually make them. And that is something that the game does really well, is it gives you that sense of this is a very hostile planet without it being terribly hostile, and that there's chunks of spaceship all over the place. There's dead astroneers all over the place that you could kind of salvage their stuff. So it does offer, that sense of, oh, this is a very dangerous place without it being terribly dangerous. There are a few hazards to watch out for, not counting, the purely environmental of, oh, your suit absolutely sucks at retaining oxygen. But it's just so sluggish in the beginning that it kind of left a bad first impression, because I had it where there was no composite near me, and I had no sources of it, so I couldn't start setting up the network to slowly expand out to explore more. So I was constantly, watching the oxygen, and because it's on the same resource, if I recall correctly, as the filters and the oxygen tanks, which extends that. Actually, if you fill up all your backpack slots, which is your inventory, you could go something like 15 minutes or so before you have to come back for oxygen. But, I just didn't have the resources. So, I was constantly on that frantic search for quite a while, actually, until I just stumbled upon, just enough to start making those tethers, to start expanding out and start being able to bring in more and more resources. And it really does feel like this game is punishing me for playing in single player because of all those mechanics. I don't have, 2 or 3 other people out going in other directions looking for, okay, I need this particular resource to be able to build up the tethers. I need this one to start building up the smelter. I need this one, this combination to start getting the soil centrifuge. To be able to essentially, once you get to that point, though, it starts to become a lot easier. But it just becomes more tedious because I'm playing in single player and I can't, designate the task. Okay, we need somebody to go out and dig a bunch of dirt. Well, that somebody is me, but I also have to sit there and man the thing because, that's the only way to do it. Maybe this game, because it has absolutely no automation, or I should say limited automation, because if you set up a set of storage containers on the same platform, they will, cycle things around a little bit. But that's about it as far as I can tell for automation.
Yeah, there's limited automation. There's that, and when you're building the spaceship, like the fuel, that process is automated. You just have to put the resources in for it to produce. I think the game is much more exploration geared and focused.
Yeah,
like I'm not saying that as like an excuse, but
yeah, which I will say that the game does a very good job, even though it is, as far as I can tell, completely procedurally generated. So it doesn't have that handcrafted feel to it. There's a lot of caves and a lot of landscapes to explore, and that's just on the starter planet before, blasting off and be able to choose my own adventure going forward. And some of it is rather striking. It has this low polygon look to the environment, with the ASTRONEERs being high poly, pretty high detail model, so it has that contrast of making it feel even more alien because of it. And the entire planet is deformable, so you could just take your vacuum gun and start pointing down and start digging. Bad idea to do so, but you can do it. It's just like Minecraft, don't dig directly under you.
Right.
And I'll say that also the gun can be a little bit frustrating at times, just with sometimes it'll latch onto a surface, and because the polygons are it's a low polygon surface, so there's a stark difference between the curvature of it. It can be very difficult to build bridges or build structures of a particular direction. So there was a couple times that I was having trouble just because I would accidentally click on something that I didn't mean to. And because the camera is a physical object in the world, it would get stuck on something. Or the backpack, if you're in a very enclosed environment, the backpack becomes a physical object. Well, a secondary physical object, I guess I should say, that you can interact with more easily. But if you're in a very enclosed environment, well, you're going to have trouble because it's going to be clipping through the ceiling and you can't access some of the slots on it, which is incredibly frustrating.
I've never had that happen.
I had it happen quite a bit, especially... I eventually was getting to a point where I had a lot of organics and I was smelting them down into carbon. And I built a cave to it was sort of a reverse coal mine. I was burying it.
Nice.
I got a smell out of it. Yeah, I could hear it.
It did.
But I was just storing it all in there, and the ceiling was too low, so whenever I would open up my backpack, the top of the backpack was clipping into the ceiling. Incredibly frustrating. And I think that's really the thing for this all around, is that there's a lot of frustrating mechanics if you're alone. The research is all time-based, and there's no way to queue it up, so you set this giant bulb of a plant down onto the research pod, and it starts scanning it for 10 minutes, and that's your research, essentially the data for your research to unlock other things. And if you're gone while that's still going and it finishes off, well, your research is going to come to a stop, so you either need to go back early or try to time it so that, okay, I'm only going to be gone for so long, I have this much time, and keep an eye on the research page to see when it starts, not going up, so you can tell, okay, my research is done, I should start wrapping up to go back. I just found a lot of little things that were irritating me, or sort of like that, which I know in a multiplayer game that would be designated to a certain person. Another person would be designated to like bringing stuff back or exploring for new resources. But overall, it feels like the game is lacking something, and I think it might just be that it doesn't really have that next layer, unless getting to space completely changes things, because it might. I just didn't get that far, but I was up to the late mid-tier stuff, where I was basically just sitting around waiting for the soil centrifuge to finish off, centrifuging. It does what Jared used to do and spin and go.
So I've never been to space in ASTRONEER. I played, I guess 6-8 months ago, a bit with Jim and Spaceman, and I can't remember if anyone else joined in with us. But we started a game and we got all the way to building the rocket, and like we were in the process of making the fuel, which takes forever. And then we just kind of stopped playing. So I don't know if it drastically changes when you go to space. It's better with multiple players. For a lot of the stuff that you said, you know, you've got multiple people working on the same thing at once. You gather resources faster, manage research faster, and building when you get to, because you didn't get to the part, I don't think, where you have to build parts for vehicles and stuff like that. There's something entirely separate.
Waiting for research. And also I had a couple things where I had one of the big research pods that I found wedge into the ground and kind of get stuck on the rock, and I didn't have the upgrades to be able to dig it out. It kind of just, sunk in, just latched on. It's like, no, fuck you.
But, yeah, there's a completely separate thing for building vehicles and stuff. And, I mean, the actual system, like where you put it down on the ground, is relatively the same as building other stuff. But, yeah, it's playable solo, especially if you want just a very relaxed sort of wandering around experience. But you definitely can get shit done a lot faster with multiple people just because the way the game's designed. So, I mean, you have got it because of the Xbox PC Game Pass.
Yeah.
I have it in both Steam and because of that, but we discovered it's not cross-platform
yet
between PC and Steam, or Microsoft and Steam.
Yeah,
because it's cross-platform.
Yeah, supposedly what they're going to do is put in dedicated servers, which will allow for cross-platform play eventually. And I am looking at the change logs, and they have patched this game a fair bit. So, there is a lot of ongoing development, but at the same time, there's... this feels like almost a live service game where they put out the game in essentially a bare-bones state and just adding to it after the fact.
Well, I mean, it was early access, which I don't know where the line is between something being called live service and early access at this point, but I mean, it was an early access game, so that is how it started, bare bones, and has grown over time.
Yeah, and it was in early access for a year and a half, thereabouts.
I'm not sure. I know when I played it previously, it was still in early access.
Let's see, the earliest, I'm just looking at this. Earliest patch was December 16th, 2016. First alpha patch was December of 2017, so a year. And it went into 1.0 in February of 2019. So, there you go. I mean,
so it looks like...
I mean, it just feels like they didn't do a lot.
I'm on the wiki, and it looks like the various planets have unique special resources on them for, like, top-tier research and then collectibles.
Are there hats?
So, I don't know. I'm not on the collectibles tab. What are the collectibles?
It does look like they do change some of the parameters, so... for example, I'm assuming this is the... Sylvia is the first planet that you get. It's considered easy difficulty. It has a medium sun, so it's fairly close where solar is worthwhile, and wind is medium. But then you have an arid planet that has very high sun because it's a Mercury analog or close to it. But then you have other ones that are very difficult, that have very little power generation outside of just nuclear. I mean, it's interesting, but at the same time, there's just it just feels like there should be something else to the base building that and I can't. It's one of those things that you know that there's something missing or feel like something's missing, but you can't quite put your finger on what. Maybe it's the lack of automation, or some form of it for single player that makes it feel like it's lacking.
I don't know. I mean, it does get a little bit. So after I played single player, then multiplayer, and then played a little more single player, and it's one of those things like once you do have the hang of it, you can get going a bit faster. But after the initial sort of push, it does slow down a lot more as playing it single player. So, I mean, I like ASTRONEER, and I'd be willing to give it a shot either with you, just you, or with other people, like depending on what state cross-platform is at, and if anybody else gets the PC whatever Game Pass.
The PC Master Race Game Pass?
Yeah. The PCX Game Pass. The XBOXPC
MOUSC.
GP. Did you say MOUSC?
Yes.
Nice. So.
I mean, that's kind of my default thing if somebody starts throwing out a bunch of letters.
Yeah. I always go RESPECT.
Yeah, but I give no respect.
So is that what you have on ASTRONEER? I don't want to close it out for you.
Pretty much. It does feel like there's more here. It's just because I got frustrated with the base building, especially how sluggish everything is. Maybe that's it. That this is starting to feel a little bubble-ish. Which I do have a bubble game I'm working on. I'll have that for next week. Because, ASTRONEER was a bust and I needed something that wasn't going to absolutely beat my ass. A little teaser for Enter the Gungeon there. But yeah.
Nice.
I would be willing to give this a shot for like a community game night or go build our own thing. Because it does look like there's a lot more here. It's just, it's obfuscated by this. Calling it lackluster feels a little bit over the top, but shallow-ish base building mechanic. So it's more of an exploration game, and I was going into it wanting a little bit more base building. Maybe this is the City Skylines problem of it's bad if you're going into it and expecting something that it's not. If you're looking for a city management game, more like SimCity was, you're going to hate City Skylines. If you want a more light city builder or city management with a lot of sandbox elements, you're absolutely going to love City Skylines. Maybe that's the problem here, is that I'm going into it with the wrong expectation and thinking that this game is something that it isn't. Fair play?
Fair play. Makes sense.
So, how about looking for things, expecting something and getting something else? Another round of Forza Horizon? Lap 2?
Yeah, Lap 2.
So, I went a bit more into the online component of Forza Horizon, mostly due to the Forzathon, which is this month-long in-game event that happens every month. That gives you points to buy new cars that, you get more cars that go vroom, but rarer cars that go vroom. And, it kind of scratches an itch that I didn't know I had. Sort of this collection thing, but I'm also a tinkerer, so, I'm kind of falling into the, toying around with different builds and, mechanic stuff.
Yeah.
But part of it required me to go online and do some racing there. And there's really two major components. Well, three major components, but two that are more fleshed out. There's the rival system. There's just pure online racing. And there's the blueprint system. And we never really talked about any of them last time around because we didn't really dive into them, I don't think, until after the podcast.
Yeah, I don't think we had.
So let's just go ahead and take these in turn. So the rival system, I think, is the rather simplest one to talk about, is that it's essentially a leaderboard system where certain maps and certain class restrictions on the cars are pitted against, like I said, it's a leaderboard. So S-class cars are grouped together and you're told, okay, you're at the bottom of the pack at this time, and you run a lap or two or whatever the particular event is, and you're essentially slowly climbing up the ranking system. And this is the most bare bones system out of it, I think. But it's also, I would say, the most competitive, where, I just missed that. I just got that,
Mm-hmm.
And it has absolutely no interaction with the other players whatsoever. I don't think no, you do see a ghost.
Yeah, you see a ghost.
Which I imagine, some of the top ghosts are probably glitched all to hell. Because there's some times on there that I don't see how they're possible.
Yeah, I haven't really checked. It made you my first rival.
Yeah, same here.
And after I, did it and beat you just to get the whatever, I haven't gone back to it.
Yeah, I also found that the way the rival system is set up is that if you want to maximize it, you kind of just coast along, because the first rival time is something like 13 or 14 minutes. Essentially somebody walking the track. And every time you redo that particular race, it puts you against a rival that is either your time or slightly better. So if you really want to milk it, you slowly coast, you build it up, build up until it starts to become a challenge. And that's the other thing, is because of how the rank up system works, is that it really pays off to do that, but there's also enough events in the game that if you don't want to milk it, you don't have to. Just go to a different event, go hit the drag strip and, see how fast your acceleration can be. Go hit, one of the circuits. Go do a land rush, that sort of thing. Which, since we're talking about different types of races, let's talk about the blueprint system. This is the most robust system in the game, and also the most trash system in the game, in my opinion. Now, you actually did some blueprints, but you were doing them essentially copying other races and changing the restrictions so that you could take, your bootleggers races, right? That sort of thing.
Yeah, because I was, just for funsies, I was like, I'm going to do some muscle cars on dirt tracks, bootlegging type stuff.
See, I didn't do actual creation. I was doing some of the actual races. I was the content consumer, you were the content creator in this. Just how robust is it? I know that you could set the pathing and set up checkpoints at pretty much will. How robust is the restrictions and that sort of thing?
You can restrict it from as simple to as specific as you want. You can choose either, you could do unlimited, which is you can do anything you want. You could restrict it by, S class, A class, B class. You get more specific and say front wheel drive cars only, or you could pick a specific make of car, so Ford or Dodge, or you could pick a specific car. You could say things like stock only. You could say, it was very robust.
So I would be able to make my peel-a-thon.
Yeah.
My peel marathon across the map, stock peels. Let's go.
Yeah, you could do that if you really wanted to, but it's pretty robust. It lets you choose from basically a lot of very specific options.
Yeah, see, I was picking through the blueprints, and my problem with the blueprint system is that people have been gaming the system. That if you go to the top, whatever, all of them are either cheat farms or very specific achievements, especially because the Forzathon requires a very particular thing, get so many pass skills. I ran into one that was literally a 10-second race that the AI cars had to do this long winding turn and you just could go straight to the end. Because the way the game is set up is that the AI cars will try to follow the path, and checkpoints could be put anywhere along that. So there was a couple races I encountered that were that claimed to be farms. And I thought, it's going to be like a long race, but you'll be worthwhile. No, it was up and down the highway, And there were 3 checkpoints, one at the roundabout on one end, one on the roundabout on the other end, and one that kind of guided you to the start-finish line. And the AI cars, they weren't allowed to get a good speed up because every time there was like a exit ramp or something, they'd be forced to go up it and down it. So, they would constantly be picking up speed and slowing down to kind of counteract any rubber banding that they may do. And it was pretty much just full throttle up and down the highway for 15 minutes. And it would give you like 100,000, 150,000 credits because it's based on distance. And it would give you a bunch of spins because you would be able to just go pretty much pedal to the metal and build up absolutely amazing amounts of just skill ups, which those would in turn give you level ups to give you free spins on each level up of either your global influence or for that particular type of race. And it was very, very, very difficult to find anything that wasn't just, grind, farm, or achievement hunting. I did find a couple, but they were so buried that, I wouldn't be able to find them again if I didn't favorite them. And it's a real shame because there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of strength in this system, but, it's just... It's the Steam store problem where, there's so much trash that you can't find anything good. And there's no curation on it, so, right?
Yeah.
I was very disappointed by it.
Yeah. I barely looked at it. Like, I poked around for a couple minutes, and I was like, I'll just set up a couple things that I want to do myself.
I mean, I did a couple of the farm races, mostly to try to build up for a house, but it wasn't particularly fun because I could take my fastest car and run up and down the highway, and that was it. I would get like a 500,000 to $1 million depending on the rolls, because a lot of it was the income from the various rolls on level ups. But it was it was mind numbing. I'd turn on podcast and just kind of hammer down. I would have to take my foot off the accelerator once going up and once going down because my hypercar that I had set up for the race, to go 175 miles per hour, or sorry, 275 up and down the highway, it had just enough lack of downforce for that one turn, or that one set of turns that I'd have to back off a little bit. So yeah, the blueprint system just feels like it's a underutilized and just disappointing system. Which also in turn we could talk about just the online races in general with that, the rank system, which is behind a massive, not massive grind wall, but a grind wall which I think is keeping out a good chunk of the player base. In order to do ranked racing, which is a more dictated form of racing, you're able to pick a little bit more of what you're wanting to do. You have to hit level 3 in unranked, which is quite the achievement, actually. Most of the racing, it's not that hard to build up ranks, but for some reason, online racing, it takes quite a while. I guess, just trying to keep, the riffraff out. But because of that, you're only getting a little bit of the player base, and it makes the matchmaking excruciatingly long. I'm talking 5-10 minutes to just find a race, which this was right after the Game Pass came out. So, it was like the second life for the game, and this was during peak hours. I can't imagine being on a less populated server or less populated server region in like the dead of night. It would be just horrible. But anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I haven't tried. I was going to say, I haven't tried this at all. Like, I've eyed it a couple of times, but I'm like,
Well,
nice
I have a lot of criticism about this, so I may scare you off or I may interest you. Because it did kind of make me go back and look into tuning my cars a little bit more, because I thought, this is good enough. No, it's not good enough. go try again. My big criticism of online racing, outside of just the fact that nobody seems to be doing it, so, the times are just absolutely insane, is that it requires you to essentially have a half dozen to a dozen different cars of various disciplines and classes set up and ready to go for pretty much anything. Once you start a online event, which takes quite a while, like I said, and also everybody has to accept it. So if you get up and go to the bathroom and you're gone for more than 30 seconds, there's a good chance that you'll miss it, and then you're back in the queue. There's no auto join, and you're given a little bit of time to go in. No. And if anybody doesn't join, if it goes 11 out of 12, it'll dump everybody back to the queue, which is rather frustrating. It only allows 12 out of 12 players, which is part of the reason why I said that if you're in a low server population area, this has to be frustrating as hell. So get in, and you don't queue up for a particular race type or even class. It just puts you on whatever. So you may get, you get S2, a dirt track. But then the next race, you get B class street racing. Then the next one, S1 class circuit racing. So you need a lot of cars set up and to remember which cars are which. Which, isn't that bad, but it requires a lot of investment, both money and time-wise, to be able to even hope to be competitive, because you're having to set up for so much and you have no idea what you're getting into, which is just crazy. Was it like this in the previous Forzas?
No. Let's see, when did they start doing the online championship stuff? Forza 3, I think?
And this was all ranked stuff, so this wasn't just, you're in the unranked queue, so it'll just throw you in whatever. No, this was the ranked stuff was doing this. Only thing you would have a choice of is if you're doing a free-for-all or team-based racing.
But in the olden days, back in my day,
get off my lawn.
When they first started doing this, they had tournaments, and you would have to sign up for the tournament and then show up. And if you didn't show up for the first round, then you were out. And, you would sign up a week or a couple weeks before the tournament actually started. And that's how they did these seasonal events. And it's kind of progressed from there. It was like that in Forza 3 and 4. And then Forza 5 has like a constant ranked system you can drop into, and I guess that's kind of the genesis of where this started. But since this is my first Forza Horizon, I don't know how it has differed from previous Horizons, but this sounds relatively similar to the system for Forza 5. But Forza 5 would set up like these tournament events that you would just queue into, and once the queue was full, like, it would go, and it was one at a time, and you could pick which ones you wanted to do, and they would be sort of rotate on a weekly or monthly basis. And it's like, okay, you can do the A class whatever, or you can do the stock Corvette Q or whatever, and you can just drop into them that way.
Yeah, that was something else that I found just frustrating, was the fact that it was completely random. So I typically like dirt racing with some street racing. I don't really care too much about the circuit racing, even though I do have a couple cars that are better for it. But it's just not as interesting to me to do, a bunch of laps on a short track compared to a rally event or a rally type event, or just, long over road racing. So the fact that I couldn't pick and choose already kind of soured me to it a little bit. But then there's also the hell is other people aspect of it. Where there was several times where I would go into team-based racing, and I would have my own team screw me over so many times. And I'm pretty sure it's just, people not understanding and thinking maybe they went into the free-for-all, but at the same time, you do realize this is team, right? So there was a couple of times that I got actually spun out by my teammates. Just I would start passing them because I would be in a car with a much better acceleration, and they would just go all the way across the road and spin me out. A pit maneuver, or they'd bump me and cause me to miss a checkpoint, and then start yelling about yelling as much as they could because quick chat only. About losing the event when I was able to pull my weight because I went from middle of the pack to all the way last to 30 seconds back because I got spun out and missed a checkpoint, and the rewind system in co-op sucks compared to single player only.
Well, yeah, because it doesn't actually rewind time; it just rewinds your car, so you can correct a mistake, but everything keeps going around you, which makes sense.
Yeah, but there's also a load time. So it's essentially the quick rewind without the time rewind that goes along with it. But the stepping on it is so short that unless you are unbelievably quick with the trigger finger on the rewind, you're going to have to hit it at least twice to have any chance to go back to a time that could actually make a difference. So yeah, it's just adds to the frustration of it. So you rewind. Oh, I missed the thing again because it was right after I got nudged. So I got to rewind twice now. So yeah, that said, I did enjoy a couple times the overland races and the some of the team-based stuff when it was a good race. But that was so few and far between that outside of when the Forza-thon requires me to, essentially register my ranked position. I'm probably not going to touch online play at all just because it's just such a frustration. And this becomes a chicken and egg problem of, okay, well, the queues are long because there's not many players, but there's not many players because the queues are long. And they're dicks to one another.
Yeah.
And I have no idea just how to solve that problem. I mean, this is a problem that's plagued a lot of games, hasn't it?
Yeah. The ranked scene for Forza has always been a lot smaller.
Well, even free-for-all took ages to matchmake. And that had a lot wider of a pool of events, it seemed. So yeah, it's one of those things that I'm not 100% certain of what their exact plans were for this, but yeah, the online just is like the sour point for me. But if I want those sweet points and all those shiny cars that go vroom, I need to do it every so often. And
yeah, I don't know if I'll ever get into ranked play. Maybe. I spend too much time just wandering around, kind of doing my own thing.
Dicking around.
I've started doing the playground games a lot. Like every time I see someone pop up for playground game when I'm just free
I did
roaming,
do the playground
I'll accept.
games as well for the Forza-thon, and it was another one of those that there was a group that was obviously working together on Discord versus a group that of completely random. So that's already troublesome. And the matchmaking set it so that it was 6-on-4. And this was after a 5-minute matchmake.
Yeah. I've done it twice, and I've lost both times. And you have to win to get the credit for completing it.
Yeah.
The first time, it was fairly even, and we just lost. It was 1-1. And it's 3 out of 5.
It's either best of 3 or best of 5.
I think it's best of 5 for this one, but it was we were tied in the last game we lost, and it was fair and square and all that jazz. It was okay, cool. And then I did it again, and it was 3-on-6. It started a 6-on-6, and then I don't know if someone just quit because they didn't like that we were losing the first one, or if they disconnected or what. But then it was 3-on-6. And it doesn't readjust teams or anything. Nope. So we lost very easily the next two, and then they won, best 3 out of 5 because they won all 3. So then I didn't try it again. I'll probably try it one more shot before it rolls over on Thursday. But I mean, I got like 70 something % completion, which is more than enough to get the like tier 1 reward, or the top tier reward for completion is like a Mustang that I already have. So I'm not upset if I don't get that.
Yeah, there's 2 different sets. There's the month-long playlist, and then there's the weekly playlist, essentially the season and the year.
Yeah.
And I have both for the winter and the first one for the year-long in sarcasm quotes. And
the 4 seasons.
Yeah. Sorry, I was waiting for you to break into song there. But I already got the limo. That's the high-end reward from the year-long event, so don't really care all that much about that.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, is that the rewards, because they're also on the randomization table, I was looking through the ranked stuff, and the Warthog is like a rank 7, I'm rank 17, so like rank 14 or 13 item. And it's the highest rank that you get. Mm-hmm. So, at the end of the month, I'll get a few things because in my 10 matchmaking matches, which ended up taking me like 2 evenings to do, it must have hit rank 17 and then fell back down to 18. So I'll still get the stuff for rank 17, even though I'm not technically in it now, or was ever placed in it. So that is one thing, and it is a fair amount of credits, but there's other ways to get credits, like going to do the blueprint stuff, and you don't have to deal with other people.
Yeah. Or completing the story business things, because you get passive credits from that.
Yeah, but not
or
a lot, actually.
Tunes. No, it's like, when you get one of them to 3 stars max, it's like 15,000 a day.
Which is chump change.
Yeah, it is, but I think there's 3 businesses, so that's like 45,000 a day. And then whatever you get for selling tunes and
liveries,
paint jobs. Yeah, liveries. Which I've gotten a little bit of passive income from that, but I still get a huge chunk of my income has came from cars, doing the the little like upgrade tokens or whatever. Because for example, all of the drift cars in that drift pack have got one that gives you 300,000 credits when you unlock it. And I mean, I always have tons of points built up that I'm not really spending because I tend to drive a few cars, and then anytime I get a new car and like drive it for something, I'll dump points into it to get all the wheel spins. And then I saw that all of the drift cars have credit rewards.
Yeah.
And then other cars have them sometimes too. Yeah. So there's, I think, 6 cars. So that's, 1.8 million credits right there.
Oh, here's the fun part, is that if you put up enough skills, you just keep buying them.
Yeah.
So, if there are ways to grind it out, but, it's kind of funny. The best way to get credits is far from racing.
Yeah, racing gives you the lowest amount of credits for anything. I mean, I do the racing because I enjoy it, but I've spent the last 2 days driving around 3-starring all of the drift zones. There's 2 I can't 3-star just because they're completely covered in snow and I can't see the road, and I've given up trying to just get it randomly. But all of the rest of them I've 3-starred.
Yeah, you've actually gotten me doing somewhat okay on drifting.
Yay!
I still hate it, but I'm able to do it.
Yeah.
So there is that.
I mean, you get good rewards for all of those like skills or whatever that you, or not skills, but all of those
progressions.
I don't know. Yeah, all of the progressions give you good rewards as well. Cars and money and wheel spins and whatnots.
Yeah,
it's good. They're all.
I went and did the drift, or not the drift stuff, but the drag stuff. That it gave me an Ultima on like rank 3.
Yeah, I've unlocked all of the drag courses now. I was grinding that a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Drag racing is really boring
Yeah, it's
in this.
yeah, it's you get a decent enough car to have the ultralight that I have. It pretty much just blows everything away on the hardest difficulty. I went to unbeatable manual, and I was beating the other cars by 2 seconds.
Yeah,
which on a drag
is
race,
eternity in drag racing.
Yeah, it's like they're at the 75% mark.
Yeah, I went out to the ice strip and was using one of my all-wheel drive big off-roaders, and then I'd set it to like unlimited, and they're all in like rear-wheel drive super and hypercars, and eventually, given enough distance, they would pass me. But for like the, I don't know, I guess mile drag strip,
quarter mile.
I think on the ice it's more than a quarter mile. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I will say that they do have one really good drag strip, and that's on the highway.
The beach actually is my favorite drag strip. I just like it. Just racing down the beach.
Well, life is a beach. And then you get sand in your crack.
And then you fry.
No, you get sand in your crack.
Because you forgot to put on sunscreen.
No, you get sand in your crack because it's coarse and it gets everywhere.
Not with me. I don't go to the beach. But I see what you did there.
See, I don't go to the beach either because I'm afraid that I lay on the beach and people would gather around and start dumping water on me and trying to push me back into the ocean.
I just turn into a really fat lobster because I burn very easily.
No, hang on. How much butter do I have?
Not enough. Not enough.
Obviously.
So I don't think I have really. I mean, you've done more of the online stuff than I have. You know, I've done some of the seasonal stuff, but you talked about that. I haven't done the ranked.
Yeah, you've done more of the Forza stuff since last time, the Forza-thon.
Yeah, I mean, I've done everything except for on the Forza-thon, except for the ranked. And
well, I was talking about the Forza-thon lives and just getting a feel for it.
Oh yeah, I've done bunches of the Forza-thon lives. I've got a couple of cars that I use for those. It's just like kind of general purpose cars. Because if a bunch of people, well, not a bunch, but if at least, 4 or 5 people show up for Forza-thon, it doesn't really matter what car you bring. There's enough people to complete the challenges. And if less than that show up, well, you're probably only going to get 2 of them out of the 3.
And if only you're there, you're only going to get the 1 and you're going to like it.
Yeah.
Even though whenever it goes to the drift event, you can start seeing people just kind of hovering around waiting. Which is annoying.
Doesn't help. But I've got 1 like general purpose off-road car and 1 general purpose on-road car. And when I get to the live, I take a quick look at the map and see what's likely to be picked for the events.
Yeah, you take it my route.
Accordingly. Yeah. I mean, that's a good way to do it.
Hey, I was able to call... I only called 2 of the events, but I called both of them that one time, remember?
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I generally like everything about the online, but I haven't tried the ranked. It sounds like that I would be frustrated by trying to do ranked. I'll probably give it a shot at some point.
Yeah, I would say that...
Because it counts for the whole the whole year, air quotes year, if you do those, so...
Yeah, so
and it goes retroactive as well.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to go back to the unranked, so... and knock that out over the course of next week. I mean, it's not that bad now that I know that I only have to do it once a month, but it's something definitely don't want to sit down and do it all in one night.
Yeah. Maybe
that's something we could co-op. I don't know.
Yeah, we could give it a shot. That would at least increase our chances of filling up the room.
And have maybe 1 competent driver on my team.
Oh, thanks.
Well, I'll at least know that if you run me off the road, you'll say sorry. Not nice driving.
That's true. I will say sorry. I try not to run you off the road, but it does happen sometimes.
Yeah, but we at least communicate.
Yeah.
Like right now, when you should be going to your other game.
A good bit of communication there, sir. So, my other game from this week is Battletech Urban Warfare, the second of the sort of first group of planned DLC / expansions, is out. It released at the beginning of June, and I've played it a little along over the last couple of weeks, but I played it a lot the last couple of days because I took a couple of days off of work for some relaxation gaming time, and so I've poured some time into it. I've not beaten everything that there is. It added some new flashpoints, which I haven't gotten to yet because I started over just to experience all of the new stuff from the beginning. They've done a lot of tweaks and added a lot of stuff that's kind of more sweeping. Like they added new maps, a bunch of new maps actually. The Urban Warfare expansion adds Urban Warfare. So
imagine
there are 50 new planets that they added to the galaxy map, and then they tweaked certain planets to include urban combat environments. So before, everything was an open field of some kind. Snowy mountains, or an open moon, a Martian wasteland,
well, what if it was
a jungle. But no battle stations in this iteration of Battletech, but there are battle stations in other ones. But anyways, everything was essentially an open field, and that was fine. I mean, there's plenty of open fields to fight in Battletech lore, but it really restricted. Well, it didn't, but it encouraged a certain type of gameplay. It encouraged a lot of long range, sniping type stuff, a lot of missile boats, and you keeping your distance. Now they've added a lot of urban combat maps, so jump jets are much more useful than they were before for increasing maneuverability. You can jump over buildings or use buildings as sniper points, and a lot of mechs that didn't work so well in open combat fields that particularly were designed with urban combat in mind. I mean, the urban mech is the most obvious because it has urban in the title, but a lot of mechs that you see in the heavy and assault class range are designed to be city defense mechs fighting in close quarters, and they don't do as well in open fields. So a lot of those mechs get a new lease on life, and jump jets started being used a lot more by me than they were previously. The maps are really interesting. It's cool to stomp through the city and smash cars underneath your feet, and to blow up buildings and things that other mechs are using for cover, maybe because you can't jump over them, like a building's too tall, or
so
it's
you
just
need more
easier
than
for you to... Yeah. Or it's just easier to lay waste to the field in front of you to clear out some space for your really big guys.
With an
but it's nice.
death toll.
Yes. Standing on top of buildings when they're destroyed now is a bad thing. You could target buildings previously and blow them up, but mechs would just sort of drop harmlessly to the ground and then get the cover bonus from the rubble. But now if there's a mech on top of a building and you destroy the building, it falls down, so it'll have to spend its next turn to stand up. And then it also takes damage, as if it had done a death from above attack. So it takes that equivalent damage to its legs.
Ooh. That could be rather nasty depending on the mech.
Yeah. And the AI definitely utilizes jumping on buildings and around. They've made a lot of general improvements to the AI. They will more intelligently overheat their mechs to fire certain weapons, to do more alpha strikes. And I've had a couple of complete wipes where just the new AI intelligence, it's not as exploitable as it used to be. And so my previous tactics to draw them out weren't working. They would focus fire a lot more than they used to would. So if they weaken one of your mechs, or one of them is already weakened, they will try and take it down. They also seem to prioritize targets a little more intelligently. They will go hardcore after that heavy long-range support mech that you've left in the back alone, because used to the AI just attacked whatever was in front of it. So it still doesn't always work, but it's better, and you have to think a little bit more about your placement of what you're doing. And that goes double for the placement, because now they have stray shots. So you know how previously you would occasionally miss, and you would see one of your bullets or a laser beam hit a building, and it would do some cosmetic damage, or it would like very clearly hit another mech, but it just was like, whatever. Well, now those shots actually do damage.
Ooh.
So when you miss and shoot a building, you do damage to that building, and when you miss and hit a mech, friend or foe, it will do damage to that mech, friend or foe.
That makes brawlers a lot more dangerous.
Yeah. It also makes grouping for sort of, you kind of always wanted to keep, previously, you kind of always wanted to keep your mechs relatively close together, especially if you were trying to sprint through an area. That way you would have the most sort of defensive firepower if something pounced on you. But now if that happens and you get hit by long-range artillery or just a lot of kind of spray weapons like rockets from an SRM carrier, or even some medium and light mechs that carry a lot of lasers, you can wipe out your entire team's evasion pips. Because even if they, it misses, like, they can do multiple points of evasion pip damage to multiple mechs, and then you will take that stray shot damage if they get hit. So, I mean, that applies to enemies too. So if the enemy bunches up together, you can exploit that. Or, if you miss, sometimes you'll still get an errant shot on an enemy mech. But you have to pay a lot more attention to your positioning now.
Now, is the errant shot mechanic base game now, or is it just with the DLC?
Yeah, no, it's base game.
Okay, so it's sort of like the City Skylines model, where the base game gets an update and the DLC adds more to it.
Yeah, the base game gets all of the AI improvements. They get the map and the map improvements, or I should say like the additional 50 planets. They don't get the urban stuff, but they still get all the planets on the map now. They get a few other things too. They get the new mech variants for stuff that's already in the game. Like the urban mech gets a new variant. There's a new variant on the catapult. And there's a couple other mech variants for stuff that was already in the game. So you get those. You just don't get the new mechs. And I think you get the new game mode. There's a new game mode, which is, what's it called? Attack defense missions. So they take, I've always said that I'm pretty sure what they did was they made one giant map for every biome and then cut it into squares. And this confirms that, because what they do is they will take 2 or 3 squares that are in a line and put them together. And now you have one base on each side, and you're in charge of defending your base while also assaulting and destroying the enemy base. And these missions are bonkers. It sounds pretty simple, but they get 3 waves of reinforcements that if you take out the base early, you stop the waves of reinforcements. You can just sit it out and defend for all the waves of reinforcements and the initial starting enemies, and then go over and destroy their base. But that is extremely difficult to do. I've done it that way once, and I don't want to do it again. It was only on like a 2-skull difficulty mission, so it was mostly light and medium mechs that I was facing on the reinforcements. But at probably 3 skulls and up, when you start getting heavy reinforcements in the drops, that would be a nightmare.
That might be a good way to farm particular parts, though.
Yeah, oh yeah. I got 8 mechs off of that. I went full salvage. So I got 32 pieces of salvage, with 8 of them being salvage I got to choose. So I that's how I built my roster to fill up my second 6 mech hangars on the Argo. But it was very difficult to do that. I expended all of my ammunition for weapons I had that used ammo. I ran out of that way early in the battle. And then basically was kiting them around and utilizing the base defenses that I had to help me wipe them out. But I still had one mech. One of my own mechs got killed. Pilot lived, but mech died. And then all of the rest of them had missing limbs by the end of it.
'Tis but a flesh wound.
But I think the better strategy is to go in as fast as you can, wipe out the base, and then mop up whatever's left. But that would be extremely difficult to do, to field a 2-pronged attack, because you still only get 4 mechs. They still haven't upgraded the amount of mechs you can drop in.
Is that on the docket for the roadmap? Let's be perfectly honest here.
I don't know, because they initially said, no, this game is designed for 4 mechs. There's a limitation in the engine. We can only do 4. And then modders have gone in and have increased it to 8. And then they've said, well, we'll look into it after our next expansion, which is called like Heavy Hitters or something like that. So, I don't know. I hope so.
So, what would the Heavy Hitters expansion be?
I don't know. I don't think they've released any details for it. It's called Heavy Metal, not Heavy Hitters. Yeah. I don't know. I'll look that up later. I don't think, unless they just dropped it, they hadn't had any information on it aside from the name.
So I'm assuming it's going to be like, all the heavy and super heavy mechs that should be in the game but aren't, or trying to add more variants to it.
Probably. I'm hoping for Solaris Gladiator stuff. That would be fun.
Hopefully better than that last mission, because that was such a letdown.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a lot more interesting if it was, well, for one, the better AI, but also, 4-on-4 with, them in a decent mech, because they were in King Crabs, weren't they? And rather shitty ones as well.
But, let's see. There's a couple other things. So they've added new vehicles, which only appear on the urban maps. They're just, different tanks, essentially. They've added 2 new mechs. One of those mechs has 2 variants.
I know they added the Axeman,
Javelin.
Right?
The Axeman, or the Hatchet Man, was in the Flashpoint
it was
update.
The other one, all right.
Yeah, in this one they added the Javelin, which is a light mech, which became immediately the best light mech in the game. There's 2 variants of it. One is a missile variant, and one is a laser variant. And it's basically like a Jenner, which can effectively fit more weapons. It's a 30-ton light mech that has the same movement speed, or roughly the same movement speed, as the Jenner, which is the fastest mech in the game. It can equip 6 jump jets, and doesn't overheat if you use a slightly more limited weapons configuration, or you can dump those and have 6, 12, 18 missile tubes if you go SRMs, or you can do 4 medium lasers and 2 light lasers on it.
I think I'm in
and
love.
It can have 650 points of armor on it, like maxed. It's a crazy good little mech. It still gets trounced by heavy and assault mechs, but it can hold its ground against all light mechs and most of the medium mechs. And then there's the Raven, which I don't have a Raven yet. I don't know quite how the electronic counter system or countermeasures works in the game. The Raven is an electronics warfare mech that is sort of a crowd favorite among Battletech mech warrior people. And I do know that it prevents target locking from indirect fire weapons. So you can use that to sort of act as a shield for your own mechs against, or the enemy can use it to shield from your indirect fire weapons, so your long-range missiles. And I think it can be used to give an accuracy boost to your guys as well, sort of like a reverse electronic or a reverse sensor lock, because you can help your guys instead of hindering the others. But I'm not sure if it does anything outside of that. Like I said, I don't have one, so I haven't got to use it yet. But I mean, it's a fast light mech as well. I believe the Raven's 35 tons. It's either 30 or 35 tons. But looks super cool. That's pretty much everything. Oh, there's been one other thing. There's been some UI, a lot of UI overhauls to make the game a lot easier to kind of read and play. It's just easier to discern information on the battlefield and on your HUD. Things have been given a little bit better contrast, a little bit better coloring. All units now have a very clear icon next to them that is either your icon or whatever their sort of faction icon is. That's very visible and easy to read and see. Some of the text is a little bit bigger. So just in general, improved UI and usability through that UI. So, and that's also just for everybody. That's not specifically to the Urban Warfare expansion.
Sorry, I went to go look at the Raven mech, and it has a big nose.
It does have a big nose.
Especially the MechWarrior Online variant. Wow. That's one thing I'm kind of looking forward to is the new MechWarrior game coming out. I hope it's actually good.
I hope it is too. But if it's not, I've still got Battletech to play.
And play.
Indeed. So yeah, that's it for games we played this week, except for the Gameclub game. Which, if you're ready to move on to that, we can do so.
Yeah, I believe so.
Alrighty. For any listeners who this is your first Game Club, Rage and I often have very different tastes in games, although you might not know that from this episode. But we tend to play different games, and even if we play the same game, we play them at different times.
See, ASTRONEER.
This is a way for us, indeed, this is a way for us to play the same game at the same time, and allow the audience members to get in on it as well. So we encourage audience members to send in any thoughts they have on the game that we play, any feedback, and things like that. We did not receive any for this month, and that's okay. The game that we had for this month was Enter the Gungeon, which is a roguelite, top-down, twin-stick, shooter-esque
Bullet hell
game. Bullet hell. Made by the crazy folks over at Devolver Digital.
Yeah, I think this is our first Devolver game that we've had for... Well, Devolver published, I guess I should say. Because Star Troll is the actual developers. But the first time we've had Devolver in the Game Club. So, how do we want to handle this? Because I think this is going to come down to more mechanics-based, because neither of us exactly got far in the game.
I played it for probably 8 hours. I'm not super great at this type of game, and I don't typically like this type of game. But Enter the Gungeon, because of its specific sort of artistic theme, we'll say, with everything, pretty much everything being gun-themed. Almost all of the enemies are themed around guns or bullets in some way. Most of the sort of lore in the game is gun-themed in one way or another. I thought that was neat, and that was enough to draw me in. What sort of experience do you have with games like this? I know you've played Binding of Isaac a lot.
Yeah, I've played the 2 Binding of Isaacs. I played Mojo Rampage a bit. I've played some proper roguelites, or roguelike, I should say. So I've had a bit of experience in the genre. I'm not great with bullet hell, and that's where I've kind of fell apart with this one, is that the game could get rather crazy rather quickly. Where I want to kind of put this in the Binding of Isaac subcategory of roguelite, because it's the same general idea of a twin-stick shooter with the dungeon being chunk-based generation. So you're going into a dungeon, and each room is essentially like a card out of a deck, and they're all kind of just shuffled together and put together, and that's your map for that dungeon. And this gets a lot crazier than Binding of Isaac ever did. Really quickly. Binding of Isaac, towards the end of its development cycle, in the last couple of expansions, started to stray more and more into the bullet hell territory, but that was limited to bosses. And this, pretty much anything can be bullet hell, which is fine. I mean, but it's also made it so that I didn't get as far as I would have liked. I was getting to the 3rd level every so often, usually getting to the 2nd level, but it also really depended on what you get, because this is a roguelite, so it's random generation and also random loot. So sometimes I would just have bad luck, and I would get just a couple passive items on the first floor and go into the boss fight with just the starter weapon, which has infinite ammo, but is usually some shade of terrible. either very short range, or effective range, I should say, or very low accuracy, which is something that's interesting, is that most of this type of roguelite is very precision shooter. This is not, to some degree. All the guns have a accuracy mechanic about them, and the starter guns, with the exception of the Marines, are highly inaccurate, to either by just being a spread shot, a shotgun, or just having essentially a cone of fire like the pilot's trusty blaster.
Yeah, the hunter's crossbow is
the hunter,
accurate.
But that is also balanced out by having an extremely long charge time.
Yeah. Because, it's a crossbow, so one shot, then you have to reload. Although it is the most powerful of the starting weapons, it can kill the standard bullet enemies with one shot on the first floor.
And it has a hell of a lot of knockback as well, so you're able to also utilize that, because there's bottomless pits, there's various traps, there's all sorts of crazy shit going on.
Yeah.
But, if you've followed Devolver Digital at all, crazy is kind of their thing. Yeah.
So, just real quick, my experience with this type of game, this is the first one of these I've played. I say these, thinking of, Binding of Isaac, there's probably some others that I'm not aware of. So, I've played plenty of twin-stick shooters in the more classic sense, like Gun Bros and both of the Halo Spartan games, Spartan Assault and Spartan Strike, and then bunches of others.
Yeah, but the difference between that and this is that those are more pattern-based, and you could eventually learn it. This is more reflex-based, and for us old men, that starts to get tough.
I was decent at it. I could get past the first floor just about every time, even if I didn't get...
I was having some trouble if I was getting very bad weapons, but it also... this game also would get into my head at times where I would get frustrated with it just because I was getting nothing. And then I would just put it down and go play Forza. Or go play ASTRONEER or something. And
even if I didn't get good weapons, I could generally get past the first floor, even with the starters. The Rogue, I really struggled with the Rogue, because the Rogue and the Marine both only have the sidearm, but the Rogue is less accurate than the Marine. And then with the Convict and the Hunter, they each have a pretty good secondary weapon. The Convict has got a shotgun, so even though it's
Convict,
shorter range...
was the one I had the most consistent time with, where I would, depending on the guns I had, I found I could dive in with the Convict, get a good shot with the shotgun, and then quickly swap to the pistol as I retreated.
Yeah. The Convict also had the Molotov cocktail, which could really help with some of the tougher enemies you might fight on the first or second floor if you do have poorer weapons, because you could drop that on them, and lots of the times they'd sit there or they wouldn't move very far.
Unfortunately,
so
if they flew, you were in trouble because that would be immune.
Yeah.
And one of the bosses flies, the Bullet King.
Yeah, the Bullet King flies, but the bird doesn't fly. I mean, he flies up, but he stands on the ground with his big minigun, so...
Yeah, the bird is... I think that's something that we should talk about right now, is just the humor of the game, because this game does not take itself seriously.
No.
So...
it doesn't take itself seriously in a wonderful way.
Yeah, you have the Bullet King who sits on, essentially, the throne of guns. Almost, like the sword throne from Game of Thrones. You have the twins, which are essentially just two very big bullets that have shades and shoot at you. They're kind of the most boring ones, but they also...
The Trigger Twins.
The Trigger Twins. I was blanking on the name, if you pardon the term and phrase there. And then you have the bird. And
the Gatling Gull.
The Gatling Gull.
I've got the wiki open just so I can see all their names.
I didn't have the boss page open, but... Yeah, the Gatling Gull flies in... lands, flexes, bursts his chest feathers off, except for, under his armpits, and he's just ripped to hell. Picks up a Gatling gun and just starts shooting at you.
Mm-hmm. Although he's, in my opinion, the easiest of the first floor bosses.
It also depends on the room, because the Gatling gun could have a room that has a lot of pillars that gives you a lot of coverage.
I never got a room that had pillars.
Oh.
I always got one that had plants, and the plants would give you cover until they were all destroyed.
See, I got several runs where the Gatling gun was in essentially a room of pillars, so you would be able to go like like that one scene in The Matrix in the lobby and hide behind the pillar.
Yeah.
The Bullet King is typically a wide open area, and so are the Trigger Twins.
Yeah. Everything is a reference to something, too, because the Bullet King is Game of Thrones, because his throne is made of guns.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what Gatling Gull is a reference to, unless it's just, like, silly. Just, like, crazy.
Let's see, this boss is a reference to Vulcan Raven from the Metal Gear series.
Oh, okay.
Both are large,
sense.
muscular,
Gatling
and
Gull.
weird, a Vulcan cannon.
Mm-hmm.
And also, the Gatling Gull's death mimics that of Vulcan Raven, both being consumed by ravens after their demise.
So, the second floor, I only got one boss. I got past the second floor several times, but every time I got the Beholster, which is a reference to the Beholder from Dungeons & Dragons.
Yeah, I fought all three. I never got the Amoconda. I never was able to beat it. I got close to it, but I was able to beat both the Beholster and the Gorgun. And I never got to fight the third set because I would always end up dying at some point. But you have the Treadnought, which is a bullet in a tank.
Mm-hmm. There's the Mind Flayer, which is a reference to the Illithids, also known as the Mind Flayers from Dungeons & Dragons. And then Cannon Balrog. Or Cannon Balrog, I guess is how you would say that.
Yeah, which is the Balrog from The Lord of the Rings.
But as a cannonball.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't get to the fourth floor. I never made it past the third floor.
Yeah, which it goes down a hell of a long ways, doesn't it? And that's not even including the past, which gets sort of into the lore of the game, where a bullet came down onto this unbeatable fortress and destroyed it and was rebuilt into the Gungeon. And within the bowels of the Gungeon is a gun which hence the term Gungeon, right? Well, that and all the bullets and guns and stuff that is able to kill the past. And all the Gungeoneers are here to essentially forget their past, for lack of a better term there. Something happened in all their lives which was traumatic that they want to try to just forget it or kill it. Which, is... well, I'm probably looking into it too much, just saying forget it. They probably mean literally kill their past.
Yeah, I would say that it would be literally, in this, it would be literally kill their past in some way. But
there's also a fair amount of lore in a comic and in the Ammonomicon, which is the book that you have that tells you what's going on with your stuff, which is kind of a rarity in this game, where typically these are wiki games where you get something and you pick it up and then you look it up to see what you just got, or if you are lucky enough that it's a game that has a item tag on it, you go look it up before you pick it up because you could be screwed otherwise. It's not that bad about that. And that's something that I really like about this, is that you're encouraged to pick up things and mess around with them, and you're not punished that often. There are a few guns that do odd things, but you can typically drop them. The passives can be a bit of a pain at times, but I never ran into anything that was a run killer like I did in Binding of Isaac. And also the Ammonomicon would give you a basic idea of what's going on with it. It wouldn't tell you everything about the weapon, but it would give you a good idea. And that's before you
Yeah.
even get into synergies, which is something that I don't see too often in this type of game, where if you get two weapons that kind of go together, they combine into a synergy, or two items, I guess I should say, because it doesn't necessarily mean two guns, I should say. For example, let's just go over to the synergies page because I didn't have that open. If you have the M1911 and an orange, it's Pulp Gungeon. A copy of the M1911 orbits the player and fires wherever the player fires. See, Pulp Gungeon.
Yeah.
Or,
nice.
Let's see, what's another good one on here? One fish, two fish. Have a barrel and the helix bullets. When shot, the barrel fires a normal blue fish and a red fish that sets the enemies on fire. See, one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish.
Blue fish. Nice.
But I kind of want to compare this a little bit to Borderlands, because that's also, very reference heavy, but that's more memes, where this is more references. And I got really thinking about it, and came down to where it's how old something gets very quickly with Borderlands to me, where something that, yes, the reference is there, but it's not a defining mechanic. It's not the joke. It adds to the joke. So the fact that the Mega Dowser is a Super Soaker, yes, that's funny, but if I didn't know it was that particular model of Super Soaker, having a giant water gun that you're shooting everybody with is still funny,
Yeah. I like that there's a mix of real weapons and then silly weapons too. Like there's the M1911, the Makarov, the Colt. There's a couple models of the Colt. There's kind of your standard. You got a sawed-off shotgun. There's a Mauser. There's a flare gun, which the flare gun is fun. It's pretty weak, but it sets enemies on fire, which is helpful against bosses. But then there's some silly stuff.
Like the trash cannon.
Like there's... Yeah, the trash... Or the bubble blaster, which is a frog that shoots bubbles.
I got
an elephant gun.
I got the lowercase
and the gun
R.
actually shoots elephants.
Did you ever get the lowercase R?
I didn't get the lowercase R.
Oh,
I saw it in the store, but I didn't get it.
You know what it does? Whenever you shoot it, there's somebody that says a bullet, and it spells out the word bullet and shoots it at the person.
Nice.
And it spells out all the sound effects as well, like blam, 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 whenever something gets hit. And it has a couple synergies, like if you have that in the bracket key, it's called hacker.
Nice.
And I just love going through the synergies. Here's another one. The AWP, or a sniper's rifle and a scope. The synergy name is 360 Yes Scope. Spinning in 360 degrees provides a 3-second buff that gives the player the next shot 1.5% damage multiplier. The buff stacks if the player spins multiple times. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. There's... Let's see.
The D-pad.
One of the best guns that I found that worked for me. Like, there's nothing like fancy or special about this, but it was the Hegemony carbine.
Oh, I got that. That wasn't bad.
No, that was a very good, just a solid gun that didn't like have anything like weird or wacky to it. It was just a good, strong machine gun.
It does have a couple interesting synergies. Like if you got the Galactic War Battle, it made it so it would fire triple shots.
Oh, nice.
And if you got a Ruby bracelet, a Kaga Battle, or a Mimic Tooth bracelet, the shots would light enemies on fire and bounce.
Mm-hmm.
The best one I got was was it the Flame Fist or Fire Fist? Sorry, I'm trying to find it on here.
The best one that I got, I'm looking for...
Well, the interesting thing about it was that it was one that every shot, it rolled a dice behind the scene. And depending on the outcome, it would change the damage of it. And also change the size of it. Of the shot.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you got really lucky... Oh, and it will also set on enemies on fire, because of course, right?
Of course.
The directional pad was also an interesting one. It would shoot in 4 directions. But if you did the Hadouken move with the inputs, it would actually start shooting fireballs for a couple seconds.
Nice. The beehive was probably the best one that I got that I liked. Because it shoots bees that home in on enemies, and they last for... I'm 10, 15 seconds, and they deal constant damage.
Yeah.
You could like bosses had a limit for how much damage they could take at a time. So you couldn't like stack it up like crazy, but you could stack it up on bosses or other hard enemies that you would find, and they could clear out big chunks of arena.
The gamma ray was also a pretty good one for that. It would poison an enemy for a short amount of time. It was a beam weapon that had a large amount of ammo pool.
Yeah.
And of course it's called Beam Green. Because of course it is, right?
Of course.
Because Incredible
I got
Hulk.
another one I really liked. Yeah. I got another one I liked called the Anvilian, and it fires anvils. Which were very powerful, and then they would knock enemies back.
Yeah, I'm just kind of scrolling through here, seeing if there's any other ones. I mean, there's a boxing glove, pistol honcho.
Nice.
Here's one that I liked. It wasn't very effective for me because it just filled the screen with bullets, but it's called the Bullet. Or Bullet. Care to guess what that does?
Shoots bullets?
You would be wrong.
Does it take control of all the bullets on the screen?
No.
Okay, I give
You're overthinking it. It shoots guns that shoots bullets.
Okay. There was one that I got that I can't find it here on this list. I'm sure it's here somewhere, but it was some kind of laser, and it fired a giant square of laser that went extremely slowly. I think it was a reference to an old like Corridor Digital video where they like made a laser that shot, and it was really slow, but it destroyed everything that it touched. And it, like this laser's like maybe.
It looks like it's a reference to Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Well, if it's the right gun, like it shoots a giant laser, like a giant square laser beam.
The quad laser is a gun that fires a large, slow laser bullet.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so it kills like anything that it hits in one hit, except for bosses.
Yeah, it has a
but it moves extremely slowly,
and it has a low ammo pool. And that's the other thing is that you're given a lot of guns, but you typically want to hold on to a couple of them, but you have limited ammo with everything, and a lot of it is ammo management and trying to figure out, okay, which guns do I want to prioritize if I get an ammo drop, because they could drop from enemies and or you can find them in the shops. There's another one, the t-shirt cannon, that was hilarious.
I didn't get that one.
Well, it's a reference to The Simpsons. It has an extreme amount of knockback on it.
I never really worried about the ammo count, honestly, because
I
was so likely to just die that I was like, well, I'm just going to make the best of this gun while I've got it.
It depended on the weapon, because some of them are very low on ammo. Matter of fact, I think some of them only have 20 ammo total. Let's see, max capacity. Ooh, there's one that only has a single shot. The makeshift cannon, you only get one shot. I'm going to guess that's a Star Trek reference. Oh, yeah, it is.
That works. I'm guessing referencing the episode with Kirk where he shoots what's the lizard guy?
Yeah.
With the gun he makes out of like some bamboo and some like coal he finds just on the surface of that planet.
Yeah. It's in the show Arena where he makes a weapon out of bamboo, hand-mixed black powder, diamonds, and vines.
Yeah.
A makeshift weapon filled with gunpowder and shrapnel. Immensely powerful, but it can only be fired once. And it looks like there's quite a number of synergies that work with it. Not name synergies, but things like if you have this particular item, it would refill you. Or if you have this particular thing, there's a chance that it could restock eventually. But then there's really weird shit like a banana. As in, it fires explosive bananas.
Is that shit, what was that really terrible movie? But when you die, you become cops in the afterlife if you were a cop.
Well...
whatever. One of them had a banana for a gun when you, looked at them in the real world.
Well, this says the gun is likely a reference to the game Gorillas, itself referenced with a weapon of the same name from Worms. Looks like it's it's an MS-DOS game. So I never heard of that one, but that's the thing is that even though I don't know the reference, it's still funny.
Yeah.
And that's not even going into the passives, which, there's a whole other thing where, you get bionic legs. There's the orange that we mentioned before. The drill, which, if used on a locked chest, it forces the player to fight 2 waves of enemies and unlocks the chest if they survive. If used on a locked door, it opens it for free. Gee, a drill that takes a while to open up a locked chest. I wonder what that is a reference to.
I wonder.
But still, even if you didn't get the reference, it's humorous, right?
Yeah, and it still works, too.
Yeah, and that's where the difference between this and Borderlands is, where if you don't get a particular meme reference, the joke falls flat.
Did you unlock any of the Gungeoneers, aside from the starting ones?
I didn't unlock any Gungeoneers. I did unlock a few NPCs, though.
Yeah, I got several NPCs. I did not get
the Gungeoneers are actually few and far between. It's kind of weird because the game is kind of inverse of what you usually get with these, because with Binding of Isaac, it's kind of trickle feeds you the new items, but it gives you new playable characters fairly decently quick. I mean, it's not, okay, well, you did 2 runs. Here's a new new playable class, essentially. But this game only has 3 unlockables, as far as I could tell, and it's very difficult to unlock any of them. It's kind of a weird juxtaposition of what you usually get with these games, which isn't a terrible thing, because it does make it so that the individual runs are a lot more interesting. And that's not even getting into the credit system that they have for the in between run progression, where every time you kill a boss, you get credits that could be, it's not just killing the boss. There's some other particular item or ways to do it. But you could use those in the breach, the opening area, to unlock new items that gets essentially thrown into the Gungeon. They treat the Gungeon as a museum, essentially, of all the guns. So in order to stock the Gungeon, they just grab a new gun and throw it in. Probably the thing that I disliked about it the most is how it hit its secret rooms. Typically in this type of game, you'll have either secret rooms or secret paths or sideways, or I should say alternate routes. There are alternate routes in the game, and it requires 2 keys to be able to get into, which I never had that many to spend. And to get these secret rooms, you had to shoot essentially where the entrance was. to reveal it, and it would crack the wall. Then you'd have to use a blank in order to crack it open. Or you could just use the blank and get lucky. But the thing about this that it took me quite a while to understand, and I still was never able to routinely find the secret rooms. In every other game of this type, the secret rooms are usually towards the center of the room. So it would match up with how the overall dungeon would configuration. And this, all the rooms have multiple slots on them, essentially. And the secret room can latch onto one of those instead of a central location. So I think eventually, given enough time, I would be able to figure it out, or figure out, each room's door locations to be able to just check. And also the starting gun and beam weapons cannot reveal the secret entrance. And I'm not.
I didn't know beam weapons didn't. I knew starting guns didn't.
I'm not 100% sure on beam weapons, but I never found them with a beam weapon, and I would sweep all the rooms. All the rooms that it was possible, because there's not enough room there for a secret room to wedge in between two rooms. No, we need to check that side of the room, right? There are ways to be able to find them without just cracking open the walls and getting lucky. There's a item called a brick of money that essentially causes one of the bricks of the Gungeon itself to become a snitch. It would point to where the entrance of the secret room is, so you can just go over and crack it open. And it really depends on what you get inside, because sometimes there would be a mimic, which was always interesting. Mimics are a pain in the ass, and it seemed like every time I would rush to get the chest, it would be a mimic, but if I held back and checked it, it wouldn't.
There's an item you can get called, or a passive, maybe, that's friend of mimics,
the
and
mimic
then they don't
necklace.
attack you. Yeah.
Yeah, see, I never had that.
I mean, I never found any secret rooms. 8 hours of play, I didn't find a single secret room.
I only found...
Granted, I gave up looking after a while, because I was like, I'm just wasting ammo or blanks to look for these rooms. Fuck it. I'll just go without them.
Yeah.
And so I did.
Yeah, it really depended on the room itself, because sometimes I would just get health, which, sometimes I need it, because this is one of those games that things could snowball very quickly. It could be, okay, I'm going good. Oh, shit, I got hit. Oh, damn it, I got hit again. I got a couple guns a couple times, but it's not, amazing. But I'm trying to think of what else. Keys was always a very short resource for me. Seems like I never had enough keys.
Yeah. There were some chests that you could shoot open and it was okay. Most of the time, whenever you blew up chests, though, you just got junk.
That was just a chance roll.
Oh.
So if you didn't have keys, you could crack them open, and still have a chance of getting something at least. But it was like I think it's a 50 or 40-60 chance or 50-50 chance. And I'm not sure if it depends on the tier of chest, because this is also another thing that is kind of a departure from the norm of this genre, is that there's tiers of chests. So usually, like Binding of Isaac is probably a good baseline for this. You have your golden chest, then you may have a red chest that does something different. Like it has a completely different item set, or there's cursed chests that cost health to open, that sort of thing. This, it's different tiers of chests, and each one has a greater chance to give you a better gun. So, like getting a golden chest for... actually, I need to go look up exactly what they are. Objects. Where's the chests on here? Oh, there's chests. Okay, so Getting a brown chest gives you a good, high chance of a crappy weapon, essentially a wooden chest. Blue chest would give you a better chance of a gun. Green chest, even better. Red chest has a high chance of an A-class gun. Black chest is an S-class gun, pretty much just a boss killer. And there's rainbow chests, which are an oddity, where rainbow chests have a 0.333 chance of replacing a regular chance. Chests can be found upon clearing a room, have a 0.001% chance to become a rainbow chest, in addition to the normal 0.333 chance. Rainbow chests also have a chance to disguise themselves as a brown chest upon revealing themselves once open, broken, or shot with a weapon that leaves a water/goop. Rainbow chests are never locked, however, they can be locked when they appear as a brown chest. Rainbow chests contain 8 items and or guns. So, yeah, you can see why rainbow chests are good, huh?
Yeah.
But extremely rare. I never saw one. Best I saw was a couple of black chests. And they gave some amazing guns. And it was just a lot of fun whenever, getting that chest. There's also a chance that the chest could be have a fuse lit on it. So typically if you run into a chest and you don't have a key, and you're not playing the pilot that has an active item that you have a chance to just pick the lock, then that's actually a 50-50 chance as well. You could go get a key and come back. But with a chest that's on a fuse, you have a time limit. And if the fuse gets to the chest, it blows up and you get nothing. Or junk, one of the two. I can't remember which. I actually didn't run into any fuse chests in this Gameclub playtime. Did you?
Yeah, I ran into a few. If I had a key, I would open them. If I didn't, I would just shoot the chest and see if I
got lucky.
If I got anything out of it. Yeah.
I mean, why not, right?
Yeah. I mostly got brown, blue, and green chests. I found a black chest once. I can't remember if I found a red chest or not. I don't think so. I definitely didn't find a rainbow chest.
Yeah, let's see. On floor 1 of the D class, the brown chest is a 42% chance. To get a black chest is 2.5% chance. But as you go down the floors, the crappy chests become less common and the good chests become more common. So on like the 3rd floor where we kind of maxed out, it becomes a 10% chance of a brown chest, a 22% chance of a blue, a 50% chance of green, 12.5% of red, and 5.5% chance of black. So, if you could get over the hump, essentially, it becomes more and more powerful, but at the same time, you're facing crazier and crazier stuff.
Yeah. And there were always at least 2 chests, or no, at least 1 chest per floor, usually 2, and then you could find another one as like a random drop from enemies sometimes.
Yeah, that's the chance of just getting a chest. And also sometimes the secret room would have them, sometimes they wouldn't. But that's also, luck of the draw. I mean, even if I got the map, it was, sometimes it was a little hard to tell exactly where to look. And this isn't like Binding of Isaac where you have a lot of bombs to go check. In order to open up the secret room, you had to use blanks, which blanks are also a very powerful item to use in battle. It destroys all the bullets actually in the room, and for a short time thereafter, as well as doing a
extreme knockback. And it does a
knockback.
small amount of damage,
and
then knockback.
So kind of want to hold on to blanks. And then there's other things that you could do, like occasionally you'd see a key enemy run away from you. If you're able to go kill it in time, you're given a key. There was another one that's an ammo drop, isn't it? That's the same idea. It goes and runs away.
Yeah, there's one for health too.
I don't think I ever saw the health one. Or if I did, I just missed it.
You can bank health.
Yeah, if you have
this
full
didn't
health.
happen to me but a couple of times. But yeah, if you're full health and an enemy drops a health bullet, which I like that. They use 2 bullets that form a heart to make up your health. But it would bank it into like a little... I don't know. Like some kind of dispenser. And then you could grab it before you went down the elevator to the next floor.
Or he's also in the shop.
The item shop. But yeah, I can't think of any other specific mechanics to really talk about. Is there anything really, without maybe getting into like the super nitty gritty that we've missed?
Maybe talking about just play styles, because the different Gungeoneers definitely resorted to different play styles. The Marine is able to do a lot more long distance damage just because of his passive, his training passive.
Yeah, he has an accuracy bonus.
Accuracy and reload. So there's a few guns or a few passives that actually go off on reload. So a couple times I had him with the Marine. I would shoot a couple bullets and then I'd purposely reload to fire them. And it made him a lot less vulnerable during that time. And he also starts off with armor, which is a mechanic that we haven't talked about. It's a pretty basic mechanic for this genre, though, where you have replenishable health, but you also have armor that goes away after you take damage. But also, the armor in this game fires off the blank effect, so it'll destroy bullets around you for a short time. And we never actually talked about dodge rolling, did we?
No, you can dodge roll, which gives you a couple of things. It gives you some few invincibility frames, and then it's also a way to jump over like pits or obstacles in the room. Like you can kick over tables and stuff to use as temporary cover. They'll get destroyed. You can use the dodge roll to jump over them.
I'm sorry. I'm still looking at items. Here's one that I think you'll enjoy. Beat 5 bosses without taking damage in a single run, and it unlocks the super hot watch.
Nice.
As long as you're standing still, time moves extremely slowly. I was just closing out.
Yeah, that would be handy.
I was just closing out tabs and I saw that. Yeah, that would be extremely useful, but at the same time, it's a pain in the ass to get because killing 5 bosses without taking damage in a single run.
Yeah, that sounds impossible. I'm sure people have done it, but that sounds impossible to me.
Yeah, impossible for us. I think that's the thing to say. Because we're old and our reflexes are shit.
Yeah. Definitely. I like to enter the Gungeon
I'm
overall.
Terrible at it, but I still had a lot of fun with it because I think mostly because it has a lot of humor about itself and it has a lot of content unlocked from the very beginning. There are unlockables using the credits from the different sources of them to unlock various things in different shops that you eventually unlock. But it's not like Binding of Isaac where I have just a handful of items at the very start and I slowly unlock and fill out the drop loot or the drop tables.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll come back and play it anymore. Maybe. And that's not because it's a bad game, but I've played it, I enjoyed it. I think I've gotten most of what I can out of it. And I just don't know if I'll come back to it. I wish it had co-op that was not local only. But alas, it does not.
Well, I imagine that's probably because, it's such Twitch based,
Yeah.
Maybe when they have Enter the Gungeon 2, right?
Yep. We could buy the Enter the Gungeon arcade cabinet, although that would be even more local co-op. But that would still be cool. But yeah, I think that does it for this month's Game Club.
Very mechanic based, just because a lot of the lore is kind of hidden behind a lot deeper reading of the Ammonomicon, the official prequel comic, and some intuition based on a few things. But there is a lot of lore here. And that's not even getting into all the various NPCs, because there's a lot that you eventually unlock just by, well, some of them you just find locked in a cell, others you do certain things. Like, I got Old Red. Did you beat him?
I don't think so. I already closed the wiki page.
He's
all that
the
stuff
bullet. He's an NPC that sets up secondary shops in the Gungeon. But he's blind, so he thinks you're a bullet as well. Or nearly blind. And he's also blue, so he's not even red. I'm trying to think of what else I got. I got Oxen Cadence, which set up a shop in the breach, the opening area. That are, I think they're the primary unlock for new guns and items in the Gungeon. Did you ever run into Winchester?
Is that the old guy?
The shooting range?
Yeah.
I only got
I ran into him.
I only got to do
got
it
the
once.
king. I got the king and his, I don't know, his squire or whatever. He's not called his squire. He's called something else. But he's basically a squire.
The Gunsling King
guys.
and Manservants.
Yeah. Yeah, I ran into him. Got the guy who worked on the elevator, whatever his name is. The drunk guy.
Oh, the Tinkerer is the guy that worked on the elevator. Let's see, drunk guy, but
he like sits beside the entrance and he's like drinking all the time. And if you stop and talk to him like every time before you start a run, he'll eventually start telling you stories about just like, it's just lore stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Tells you some stories about like some of the bosses and some of the other Gungeoneers, things like that.
Yeah, there's the Ledge Goblin that you sometimes have to go rescue. There's the Lost Adventurer, who is definitely not Link. So yeah, there's a lot here to unlock, but it also gives you a lot of content from the very beginning.
Yeah. So, good game overall. Yeah. Can definitely enjoy it without the lore stuff, but the lore stuff adds to it.
Yeah, and I would say you could somewhat enjoy it if you're even terrible at bullet hell, but it definitely helps if you aren't old and you have reflexes. Or you just hop yourself up on caffeine.
Woo!
Woohoo!
So, just a quick reminder, because we've mentioned this a couple times at this point, but the Game Club for July is going to be Final Fantasy Tactics, the PS1 version. We plan on playing that using an emulator.
Yeah, back to the emulation station.
Yeah. However, if you happen to have an original copy and a PS1 or a PS2 to play it on, by all means, knock yourself out doing that too.
Should we go ahead and announce August as well and try to keep 2 months ahead? And probably should
sure.
do it on Discord as well, you know, say what our actual game club is and what's coming up. So, our August game club is a bit of an interesting one. We're diving into the Xbox Game Pass, for PC that is, and we picked something out of there. And it's one that was recently on the Discovery queue, Void Bastards. Hey, we're back into the roguelites. Only this time...
Except this time first-person shooter.
First-person shooter. So we'll see how we do with a change of perspective. And, well, subgenres. Because I don't think this is going to be as bullet helly. I hope.
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, in August.
Yeah. So, to the news.
Woohoo! Oh, wait. I just saw the first one. Never mind. I'll take it back.
Yeah. Our first news topic of the night. EA says they're not loot boxes, they're surprise mechanics, and they're quite ethical.
Yeah, EA. Just because you could say that you're ethical doesn't make you ethical.
Yeah, I can say lots of things, but that doesn't make me rich. or muscular, or attractive in a conventional sense, or taller. I can say all those things, but it doesn't make them true. Just like you saying this doesn't make it true. I guess technically surprise mechanics is true because it is a game mechanic.
Don't say surprise mechanics,
but it's not ethical.
Don't say surprise mechanic too often, otherwise Jim Sterling may show up.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, he created a new character already out of this.
Yeah. But yeah, EA recently was in was it a hearing or just part of an investigation? Like they were testifying. I don't quite understand the sort of legal ramification of this, but it's part of some ongoing investigations that various countries are doing into the loot boxes or gambling allegations.
See. It was in response to questions from the Scottish National Party MP. In an oral evidence session with the UK Parliament's Digital Culture, Media and Sport Committee. So it was a committee meeting exploring loot boxes, but they weren't loot boxes, so they closed the council, and everybody went home for tea. See, EA, if you just say something, it doesn't make it true.
Exactly.
If it did,
but
then the U.S. political scene would be a lot better off. Or worse. I can't decide which. Sorry.
But there's plenty of video and articles, or YouTube videos and stuff that talk about this, that have the actual statements that they're making, and it sounds worse than you think it does to listen to someone say it out loud. But, I mean, they're essentially going back to this argument that, hey, this stuff is not gambling and it's not bad. This is like the start of a talking point. There's been things that have been said since then.
Is more...
I can't remember what his...
I would say this is more trying to rebrand it, trying to get away from loot boxes because the term has been tainted. And because we've talked about how the law has to be very laser-guided, otherwise, you get... collateral damage, or a straight shot if you're in Battletech, you may be able to try to weasel out of certain regulation just by calling it something else if the law is set to deal with loot box instead of a loot box like mechanic. So I think that's part of it, actually.
That's a huge part of it. It's rebranding from a legal standpoint, rebranding from a PR standpoint. I have no idea what the, specific exact percentages are. I'm not sure there's a way to know that for sure, but it seems like more and more and more, even like your sort of standard outlets that have been, on the fence or maybe more in these companies' corners about loot boxes, are starting to be like, yeah, this loot box bullshit is like, gone far enough, right, guys? Like, we're done with this, right, guys? And I think it's starting to get away from these AAA developers, and they're rebranding. Although it's interesting because like this goes even further, like with them contradicting themselves. I think it was yesterday. It might have been today, and I think he was their CFO or CEO, or like he's one of those alphabet soup positions at EA, was doing an interview. And he was asked about, loot boxes and stuff. And he was like, oh no, our surprise mechanics are definitely not exploitative. And if it was found that they were, we would absolutely comply immediately with any governmental regulation. But they have not complied already with government regulation in, what was it, Belgium? Yeah. So it's like, okay, sure. Now you're just like lying, telling bold-faced lies.
I didn't put that on the docket just because the interview is all just corporate talk and just impossible to follow. I think
most of it's nonsense.
I think it was Jim Sterling or someone that did a video on it that I sat there and listened to it, and I couldn't follow it with someone trying to guide me. And the person trying to guide me got confused as well. And then suddenly we ended up on the peak of Mount Everest, and I don't know how that happened. Or I may have just been watching Last Week Tonight. I don't know.
It was those surprise mechanics.
Yeah, it is kind of funny that they mentioned Kinder Eggs, because my local grocery store does a weekly giveaway. And it just happened to be this week they gave away, well, it wasn't Kinder Egg, it was Kinder Joy, because Kinder Eggs are actually illegal in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny because when I opened it, there wasn't a big slot machine, a bunch of fireworks didn't go off. It was a enclosed experience, and there wasn't a bunch of microtransactions tied to, having a chance of getting a different bird out of my Kinder Joy egg. Kind of weird, huh? Maybe I got a dud.
Maybe so. You should get a refund on that free Kinder Joy egg.
But it's also kind of interesting. I threw it to this article or in this news topic as well, where EA was also talking about how they can't even keep track of time played in FIFA. And that makes me wonder just what are they tracking, It's not that we could say this person played too much time and therefore it's unhealthy. Consumers have to have choice, and they also have to have the right of privacy. And we think that that's very, very important.
Yeah, I don't believe that for a second. They might not be tracking something because they can't, or there's some law that prevents them from doing it that we don't understand, or because they think it's irrelevant.
No. Maybe I'm looking into this too much. Maybe I have the tinfoil out. But I think the reason why they don't track certain things, and this was in the same committee where they were were defending the surprise mechanics. I think part of it is trying to weasel out of any responsibility and possibly saying, well, since we don't track that, we can't deal with it. Just like they said here, and then try to mask it with, but we're respecting their privacy. But at the same time, they talk about being able to track players in their first-person shooters to the point where they could redesign maps because of a checkpoint being confusing to players. So, something's not right here.
Yeah. I would say that it's probably that one. If they don't track it, then that means they don't have to deal with it, and they don't get enough value out of tracking whatever that specific thing is for it to outweigh the potential cost that they have to deal with for tracking it. At this point, I just expect everything that I do on anything that's connected to the internet to be monitored at all times by someone, somewhere. And it's just easier for me to live my life that way.
Here's an interesting stat out of all this, though. It's referring to FIFA, which, is their big cash cow. It's kind of weird that FIFA loot boxes is the EA cash cow, huh? The developer that has Star Wars. Think about that. And if you need a moment to go cry, I'll understand. But loot boxes over Star Wars, right?
Right.
But we don't actually record playtime, Hopkins said. The FIFA game has a number of different modes, and each of the modes are built to be enjoyed differently. Like one we suck all the money out of you. Oh, sorry, that's editorializing. When we look at how players are playing, we look at have they come into the game recently. We look at something called session days. So they track it based on essentially a day counter. And they said that the average number of session days for a FIFA player is about 50. That's a rather high average, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I would assume so, but I don't play FIFA. I played FIFA for an hour once a few years ago when Katie wanted to play FIFA. And then she got mad at me because even though I had never played it before and she had played previously, within an hour I was beating her, and then we didn't play anymore.
So you had the entire experience there.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's
good enough for me. I don't care for football. Not my
Well, what about
sport.
soccer?
Don't care for that either.
Well, how about
Care for that even
how
less.
about basketball? Because I'm not sure if we have a lot else here to talk about outside just, oh, EA, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Outside of just drinking
EA.
the mobile Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Fuck you, EA. That's what I have to say. Yeah, moving on. I don't care about basketball either, but, when it's a news article about a company doing something shitty, we can
So,
talk
hey,
about
the
that.
other company that does sports games that do shitty things up in them, 2K, well, remember a while back, I said that sports games are probably one of the few games that you could probably get away with having advertisements in, and it actually makes sense in the game, and makes the game feel more immersive. Well, 2K has found the one way to do that where it's immersion breaking. It's quite amazing, isn't it?
Yep.
So they have full advertisements on their loading screens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way to do this is, you have the ads in the background in a way that makes sense.
The sponsorships.
On the court, or as sponsorships, or something that's like in the background on a loading screen. That's fine.
Yeah, but
Makes sense. Sports
Sports
games,
a full
sports
video
advertise.
advertisement. And mind you, it also blocks the functionality that you would normally have in the loading screen of messing around with your team, according to some of the Redditors here. It's just baffling. To be fair, 2K is like the developer that's been eating paste for the last few years. So they're a little brain dead. This is the company that last year just made an obscene grind with their virtual currency. They don't even hide the fact that it's a bullshit currency. They call it VC. It was an obscene grind and huge pay-to-win mechanics. And hey, it's the same this year, but now you have to watch an advertisement to be able to play the game, and you don't even get a bonus for watching the damn ad. I mean, if they made it skippable, and if you watch it and you get a little bit of currency, that's at least an argument for it. This is just, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, I'm gonna be looking for interesting YouTube comments about or videos about this later, because I think Sid Alpha and Jim Sterling both did videos that I watched
has
discussing this,
like a 10-minute video on this, and I skipped it because I pretty much don't need the 10-minute video for this one. I like his stuff when there's more content here. But this, I don't think we need the 10 minutes. We don't need the 10-minute to get to the full algorithm pleasing padding,
Yeah. But, I mean, this is shitty. Like, when they first introduced this, I don't remember if we talked about it on the show or not, but I know I thought to myself, well, can't wait till they set it to where it can't be skipped or turned off or whatever. Then it's just there, and you have literal commercials in your game that you paid for.
And mind you, this is still a full-price game.
Yeah. That's why I added in your game that you played for.
Well, I wanted to hammer home the fact. This is a $60 game with immersion breaking, flow breaking, full advertisements. Oh, and there's the other thing, all right? Here's the other thing about advertising. Is that typically these games, or even YouTube itself, I mean, YouTube is just as bad about it. They'll have a handful of ads that are curated for you because of the algorithm. So, you get to see the Sunlink damn ad for the 20th fucking time when you're actually using the service. So, how quickly will these ads get? Never mind the fact that, you're sitting there for 20 to 30 seconds watching an ad after the game has loaded, mind you, according to some of the Redditors here.
Yeah. It's fucking stupid. I'm glad I don't play sports games, but I can't help but think, I wonder when this is coming to other games that I play.
Yeah, also
or other games that I do play.
Yeah. It's just, what the hell? There's just so much bullshit with the both the mobile genre or the mobile area or whatever you want to call it and the sports area. And there's a lot of overlap between them now. And it just makes me wonder how long it's going to fester until, something spills over. Because we've had advertisement in games before, particularly like during our pre-show, we talked about it. Racing games have done it on their billboards in the background. A sports game can get away with it with the same, and the sports games have it where even in real life, the advertisements on the actual field or whatever rotate around so you have more ad space.
Yeah.
But that's not enough. There's still money on the table. I mean, last year we were talking about them being greedy, and this year we're talking about them being greedy.
Yep, and I'd say we'll talk about them being greedy more times this year and also next year and all the times.
And I still have this portion of me that wants to almost victim blame the people that are buying the games. But I also recognize that a good chunk of the sports game fans, the ones that aren't buying the game year to year to year, are the more casual fans that will pick it up every other year or every few years. And they're not, the enthusiast level. So, they didn't hear about, last year, all the grind problems and progression problems. They didn't check Steam to see all the reviews. They may have gotten a physical copy and then have a rude awakening. Actually, hang on. Let's see. 2K19. Let's see what the Steam score reviews are sitting at right now. Because this ought to be amusing. Actually, higher than I thought it would be. Sitting at 30% on recent and 27% on overall. And damn, have you went to their store page?
No.
They have microtransactions all over the place in this.
For 2K...
2K19, NBA 2K19. And boy, people are pissed. Actually, I'm surprised this hasn't hit the threshold for the review bomb for Valve. I wonder if that's, a manual trigger. They see a lot, they get reviews in, but then somebody goes flips a switch. Gaben wakes up on his throne and hobbles across the room. And then realizes, wait a minute, that's the game development studio. We don't want to go in there. Actually, I can't say that because they did make a mobile game this week. So, hey, we got what we wanted. Valve is making games again.
Still counts for something, question mark?
Well, turns out it was a monkey paw wish. Makes you wonder just what the people are reviewing positive here. I mean, good if you're playing by yourself.
Maybe people reviewing it positive, but then saying, this game is shit. I'm just saying positive so that I don't trigger the review bomb thing.
Or just the sunk cost fallacy.
Maybe.
But hey, with the Steam summer sale, you could buy this piece of shit for $10.
Wow. I'll pass.
I'm just flabbergasted about the entire thing.
Okay, here's a positive review positive reviews in the last 30. If the game wants you to lose, you will lose, but it's still a good game.
That sounds like a bad review told in a good way. Man, just going around the subreddit for 2K19, or NBA 2K, I should say, it's a dumpster fire.
So, this one says, I'm not going to discuss the multiplayer, microtransactions, lack of PC support, lack of community, because if you're here already, then that means you probably know all about that stuff. Good single player. That's what that review says.
I love people on the Reddit talking about no microtransaction week. Don't buy microtransactions for a week and to show 2K that we're upset. How about don't buy the game? I've realized, like I said, a good chunk of the people that are probably pissed off are the ones that don't follow gaming all that close, so they don't realize just how utter shit 2K has become.
Career mode is good. Everything else is garbage. Don't buy if you want to play with friends. But it's a positive recommendation. I'm going to stop looking at the reviews.
Don't look too far into the dumpster fire.
Okay, last one. It's a positive review. Game crashes constantly. Microtransactions are terrible. Convinced me to go play real basketball instead.
Mark that one as funny and not helpful.
Alrighty. Well, I think that does it for news topics for this week. So that means it's time for us to move on to Community Corner, where we received an email from good old Jim3535. It was a link to an article and a podcast called Quirks and Quarks, which I never heard of before, but I kind of like it. Might look it up and see what other kind of stuff is on there. But it was an episode that was about video games, and he interviewed a couple of different people on there discussing some different aspects of games, violence in video games, Minecraft, and sort of using that, I think, as a springboard for other video games being educational tools, and then different ways that video games are used for therapy for children. So we will talk about that for a few minutes. All three of these things are topics that we've that we've talked about at one point in time or another in some way. Like violence in video games has come up several times on here, about how video games don't actually promote violence.
If you keep saying that, I'll fucking cut you.
And then we've talked about Minecraft as an educational tool before. And then I've talked about using video games in therapy, although I was not aware of the specific game that they had developed called Mindlight, so I might talk about that for a minute. But that was the third part, so we'll just kind of go through this. Was there anything interesting or that really stuck out about it to you?
The interesting thing to me was with the Minecraft. Every time we've seen it before, Minecraft being used in the classroom, it's been used as essentially like a museum where there'll be like a fixed map. I think the one we saw that I remember real well was the structure of the eye. And I commented how it was a little bit tough to visualize just because of how low poly it is, or essentially pixel art, because of how Minecraft is. Was it like yard by yard blocks? So unless they build it absolutely huge, which they didn't in this particular picture, it looks very rough. They used essentially, it sounded like a modded version of Minecraft to kind of sneak in science and history lessons as well. And it gave objectives and essentially missions or quests inside the game itself to complete whatever they were doing. One thing they were talking about was building a Titanic with a group of middle schoolers. I believe it was 8th graders. Another one was a historic city, but I can't recall which city it was.
Yeah, I don't remember which city it was.
Talking about the life in the city and different things, and was incorporating history lessons, and sounded like it was a highly modified version of Minecraft that we hadn't seen before. So I found that to be particularly interesting. So Minecraft Educational Edition. We've seen games do that somewhat. Kerbal Space Program actually has an educational version that does a few different things. As a good example.
Yeah, the more recent
Assassin's Creed also. I think that's where you were going with that. But that's
what I was about to say.
Once again, the more museum aspect of it.
True.
Where this is more learning by doing with the Minecraft and Kerbal Space Program, which works still, though, better with some students outside of the more museum style.
Yeah, but what museums can you go to where you can scale the actual exhibits? I mean, I know it's not exactly the same.
Well, there's one near me that
getting to-
has a scalable art, so
well, that's interesting.
I can't get my fat ass up it, but they. But it's the Clay Center has some of the science exhibits that are scalable, if I recall correctly.
That's interesting. I would suppose that's more uncommon than common. But, yeah. The first part being video games essentially don't encourage or increase violence among youth for a variety of reasons, which we've talked about before. Primarily, we've seen this sort of behavior and thought pattern with everything as it's new, and it's like, oh my god, save the children, with radio and with TV and with different types and styles of music, jazz, rap, metal, etc.
Look at the very bottom.
And those things don't actually prove to be true. Most of what has to do with people and violent tendencies has to do with parenting and socioeconomic status. Oh, that's neat.
Ashton's climbing sculpture, and it's this massive cargo net thing.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And it goes up like 2 stories.
I'd climb that. I could get up it.
Well,
it'd take me a while.
It's my crippled fat ass. But this climb is challenging. You should not climb if you're afraid of heights. You do not like tight spaces. You're prone to dizziness. You're pregnant. Well, you're out, Jared. You have heart or blood issues, or you have any medical condition that can impair you while climbing. Well,
they might count me out on that one.
Yeah, diabetes.
Yeah, that diabetes. But anyways, he's got someone on, he interviews it, she talks about it a little bit. The violence in video games part, that is. The part that I found interesting, which I've talked about using video games as a tool for therapy with kids, and I've utilized Minecraft and some other games that encourage productivity, focus, working towards goals, things like that. But they specifically have developed a game called Mind Light, which uses a sensor on the head to detect the brainwaves that are associated with anxiety and fear, essentially, to help teach kids to utilize breathing and grounding techniques to reduce their anxiety. Whenever they are anxious, it turns the lights down in the game where they can't see what to do. And then they have to utilize these breathing, grounding techniques, etc., to calm down and then continue playing. That's a really interesting way to give positive feedback for utilizing grounding and coping skills. I teach those to people all the time, kids and adults, and most of the time you can find something that works for somebody. There's 1,000,001 coping skills out there, and most of the time deep breathing works with people, probably about 70 to 80% of the population. And if that doesn't work, there's a whole host of other coping skills that you can use. But actually teaching people how to use them, encouraging them to actually try them when things are difficult for them is the biggest issue. Because most people are like, oh, that breathing shit, that doesn't work. But it does, because you're providing different, essentially, feedback to your body to sort of trick your biological systems to slow your heart rate down and things like that, which can help reduce anxiety by slowing that panic response, which can allow your sort of the rational portion of your brain to take back over and calm things down. And this provides an instantaneous and fun way to teach those skills and utilize that feedback loop. And they talk in the actual podcast itself about how they're using their mind light. Instead of referring to it as like, I'm going to use my deep breathing coping skills or whatever, they'd say, I'm going to use my mind light, which is great because you want people to take ownership of that in order to be able to implement it into their daily lives. And I had not heard of Mind Light, and I'm going to, I think it's still in the testing phases based on what they were talking about, but I'm going to do some more research on that and see if I can actually get a hold of a copy of that. That would be a really good resource to use in therapy. It would be great for kids, but I could see it working for a lot of adults too. Just as, again, an instant way to provide that feedback loop to them. So I thought that was really cool. They compared it to having a similar success rate to cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the most empirically researched and proven type of therapy. And they said that it was working essentially about twice as fast as cognitive behavioral therapy, which I'm not sure about that. Cognitive behavioral therapy tends to work really well in a very narrow set of circumstances, but outside of those circumstances, a lot more difficult to utilize. But I won't get too far into the nitty-gritty of all of that. But that's just some stuff that I'm looking at going, I could see this working, but I'm not sure if your numbers are completely accurate, given you've only done a small amount of testing and studies with this, comparatively speaking. So I want to actually take a hard look at that research and then see if I can get my hands on a copy of Mind Light. But anyways, I thought that was very neat. So, and very specifically applicable to what I do.
Which is why I didn't latch onto it.
That is fair. But yeah, that's the whole thing. It's like a 20-minute podcast episode, a little bit less because there's some sort of build up and then let down as the episode winds up and then finishes. So somewhere between 15, 18 minutes of actual content, so you can get through it pretty quickly. And then the accompanying article basically has all the information, just not quite as much of the personality. And they do go a little bit deeper in the interviews than the article itself covers. But neat stuff. Thank you very much, Jim.
And thank you, Jim, for that. If you wish to throw us some more content, you can do so at vglpodcast@gmail.com or just tweet it to us at VGLpodcast on the Twitter. Or, of course, our Discord, which is on vglpodcast.podbean.com. You'll have a link there. So, Discovery Queue?
Indeed. Before we start Discovery Queue, just want to say the summer sale is on. It started today and it goes through July the 9th. So, you're going to get two full weeks of summer saleness. So, if you were not aware of that, head on over there and check it out.
So, I have one immediately once again. And this is one that you're going to be pissed at me for getting.
Okay.
Cyberpunk.
I'm not pissed that you got that. I see Cyberpunk on my queue. It's like the third or fourth game in my queue.
It was first for me, but is it possible to be listening to this and not know about Cyberpunk 2077 at this point?
I suppose so.
CD Projekt Red take on the cyberpunk genre, basically taking everything they've learned from the Witcher series and applying it to essentially what Deus Ex would have been if they were actually given a budget.
Yeah,
that's the one I've heard a couple times is Deus Ex with a big budget, and that's not wrong. Yeah, maybe with a little bit less of a conspiracy lean to it, but definitely not wrong. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. So, you got one?
Yeah, I'm going to put it in there right now. It's called Hell Let Loose. It is a World War II game. Multiplayer. At first I was like, is this a World War II Battle Royale? Because it's like 100 players on a map, but it sounds like it's more like a tug-of-war style multiplayer game where the idea is to have really large battlefields with huge player counts. Nice. With big player counts, and you're trying to essentially take over the map. It looks neat. I'd like to check it out before I say yay or nay for sure, because I definitely like World War II games. It's been a while since there's been, in my opinion, a very good one. So if this turned out to be really good, then I'd be all about that.
So
it looks like there's roles, so it looks like they're maybe going for sort of a battlefield type of game, like with classes and things like that, and large maps, kind of like how the more recent Battlefield games have done it. But it's not Battlefield, it's an indie game?
which is
Developed
interesting. Especially
Black Matter.
Especially going
sorry.
big multiplayer for an indie company. That's always a big risk. Sometimes it pays off, but that's
Yeah, and it's not
rare.
free to play. Yeah, it's not free to play. It's early access. Looks like a fully purchasable game. I don't know. Cool. Looks neat. Keep an eye on that.
So, I'm back in the roguelikes. With roguelite, I should say, even though they call it the wrong thing. Gungeon, which is an anime-style action role-playing game. When lunar eclipse, you, one of the students of the Celestial College, start your ... So, looks like a bit more hack and slashy than Enter the Gungeon. So if you wanted something that was more beat 'em up, hack and slash, more traditional ARPG, this would be more up your alley. Or if you just want anime girls, because there's a girl with cat ears on her headphones. But looking at the reviews, there's someone saying, I failed and it sent me back to the beginning, which makes me feel stressed and disappointed. It's a roguelike. So, you're up.
Yep, I got a game specifically for Ghost Shark.
God.
It's called Police Simulator Patrol
I've seen
Duty.
that on Keymailer. I put in for a key for it, but...
Experience the exciting day-to-day life of an U.S. police officer in Police Simulator Patrol Duty. And it just goes to list a bunch of stuff that's basically what cops do.
Is there donuts?
Pull over speeders, arrest criminals,
Sorry.
investigate, yada yada. But I say that specifically because Ghost Shark plays... Oh, I forget what it's called, but it's like a Grand Theft Auto like mod where there's police officers and you have to like actually do reports and patrols and things like that. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ghost Shark, because I've... Not to shame you, but I don't understand that at all.
I just picked because I care. Okay, here's one that's odd, mostly because it's not a VR game. I originally thought this was Cooking Simulator. And this isn't the wacky kind of simulator. This looks like it's an actual game meant to teach how to cook, at least to some degree.
So kind of like PC building simulator?
I would say, yeah, sort of like that mixed with Cooking Mama. So, follow recipes, cut vegetables. The reason why I was checking this was the way it handles, it looks like it'd be a VR game, but it's not. And it looks like it doesn't even support VR, which is just weird. Very, very weird. This is just one that I talk about, well, it does say it has the VR tag. I'm not sure if that's a misprint or if it's going to have VR, and it's just very strange. And if you want something that will teach you to cook, maybe this would be something like that. But it looks like it's still very rough, but it's not in early access, and it's full price. And it's not even on sale. But hey, something odd, right? Hey, I just got Police Simulator.
Nice. So I got Destiny 2, and I don't really give a shit about Destiny 2 at this point, but I'm putting it on the list because after they're split with Activision, there's been rumors that Destiny 2 is going to go free to play at some point.
Rumors, they've confirmed it.
Oh, they did confirm it? I missed that, apparently. But they're releasing on Steam with their next sort of update or expansion, which is in September.
Yeah, Destiny 2 goes free to play in September with all the year one content unlocked.
Gotcha. So
I thought you knew about that. That's why
Yep.
I never put it on the docket.
No, I must have missed it. I'd heard that they were talking about it, and then I missed. I feel pretty far behind on like all of the video game podcasts I listen to because I've been listening to Dice Funk, going back and re-listening to the older seasons that I'd never listened to before. So I'm like a month behind.
Yeah, I had to skip my
soon.
podcast and just essentially download fresh because I got tired of listening to podcasts talking about Christmas. I mean, if I wanted that, I would just wait a couple months and download new ones anyway.
Yeah.
So I got the newest edition of the F1 series, F1 2019 Anniversary Edition. I mean, it's the F1 games. They're usually at least fairly good on the simulation side of things. They're not exactly my cup of tea. But it's, something for those who want to play it. It's coming out in just under 2 days as of recording. So who knows how good it actually is until 2 days from now. Of course, don't pre-order because that'd be naughty. And they also have a whole buttload of DLC for it. It's kind of odd to have an F1 game coming out in the middle of the Steam Summer Sale, though.
So I'm reading which son something or other. Elaros Origins. Looks like a open world RPG that gives me like old school Elder Scrolls vibes from just looking at it. Could be wrong, might not be. I don't see anything on here about it being like inspired by the Elder Scrolls or spiritual successor to X or Y game. But just like looking at this makes me feel like, this feels kind of like an older Elder Scrolls game, maybe like in Oblivion. So, but let's see. You're the only one who can stop the Cataclysm from destroying the land of Elaros. Every 400 years, a cataclysm wipes out nearly all life in the land of Elaros, and the last cataclysm was 399 years ago. So, looks cool. I'm always up for single-player exploration or single-player games in a world where that AAA studios, for the most part, think that single-player games are dead.
Oh, my last one is an oddball. And both a good and a bad way. Space Engine. So, Space Engine is up until this point, a free-to-play, pseudo-procedurally generated, but not really, simulator for just space travel. Basically, what would happen is they would put in as much as they could of real space, and then they would procedurally generate the rest. And as things become, as science progresses, they update it. So, Space Engine is releasing on Steam, or has released on Steam, and from what I could tell, the main difference is updated graphics, VR support. I'm not sure if the free version has it. They've also made it so that they've changed the flight simulator mechanics, so you could have spaceship physics and navigation to do, cool flybys. Hey, you could recreate the opening of Star Trek Next Generation. Just have to get Voyager in it, right? But
yeah.
An updated planetarium and more tools. So essentially a premium version of the free game. I'm not sure how they're going to update the free version, or if they're essentially going Dwarf Fortress and this is a funding way to bring in more funds, or if they're kind of abandoning the free version and going full premium. I hadn't heard which way they're going just yet. Dwarf Fortress is going the other way, where essentially the developer of Dwarf Fortress is concerned about his health eventually failing, because Dwarf Fortress is never going to end, just him. Which sounds like a cruel way to say it, but what the hell, right? So he realized that at some point he's going to have a more steady income, because the way Dwarf Fortress donations work is whenever there's a big release, he gets a huge spike and then it trickles down to about the noise level. I'm not sure if that's this or not. I mean, Space Engine, I've toyed around with it before, and it's interesting to go through and see some of the procedural generation. And it makes me wonder just how many screenshots we're going to see of this in the background of visual novels that's crappily thrown on Steam in a month.
Probably a few. I might get this, actually. My kid is really into space right now, and this would be a fun thing to sit down with him.
But that
to
wraps
do.
up my queue.
Yeah, my queue's done too.
I had an interesting assortment.
four.
I had some outright porn games. I mean, not even pretending to be porn. A little risque. They were just porn.
Yeah, I didn't get any fun porn games
They're starting to get
this time.
They're starting to get more common.
I've seen lots of like trashy like porn games, but not trashy in like a heh kind of way, but like an oh god, that's terrible.
As in
like the really cheap
plastic girls. As in
Yeah.
the CG, but they weren't able to make realistic skin, so they all look like blow up dolls.
Yeah. Or the ones that just do like some lewd anime pictures and then put them on like the tile puzzles. See like a million of those.
Asset flips. I have seen the VR experience pop up every so often as well. Yeah, a girl in a room and you're a creep with her.
Yeah, I've seen a few of those actually.
Yeah, it makes you feel good about the development of VR, huh?
Woo! I mean, sex sells.
Yeah.
Porn is probably the biggest driver for VR for the consumer.
Either that or engineers.
Engineer porn.
That would be called mechanical porn. That's on Reddit.
Woo.
Actually, I'm not joking.
No, I know. There's lots of whatever porn subreddits that are
Not porn.
just lots of the thing that you're looking for. Yeah, not porn in the traditional
They're called
sense.
the Safe for Work Porn Network.
Yeah. But that does us for Discovery Queue.
I was heading over to Reddit to randomly grab you that link. And I did see something interesting. I'm just going to drop it here. I'm not going to say it on the podcast itself. But I think I think this will make you smile. There you go.
Ooh. Nice.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that in our kind of post-show wind down, I think. Agreed?
Yeah. Agreed. But to get to that post-show wind down, the first thing you got to do, Rage, is hit it with the socials.
Well, I've been Caffeine Rage. You can find me on the YouTube, Gaming with Caffeine Rage. You can find me on Twitter, Gaming with CR. And maybe someday you'll find me on Twitch.tv, which will be Caffeine_Rage. And what the hell, if you wish to send me a message, you can find me on Steam, Caffeine Rage. And you've been?
Yeah, I have been Gaming Psychologist. You can find me on the YouTubes by searching for Gaming Psychologist, on Twitter at JMA4707, and on Steam, JArthur4707.
And if you will slow know exactly what episode of the podcast you're coming from, the password for this week is Bomonomicon. My favorite version of the Necronomicon.
Nice.
From Team Fortress 2, if you must know as well. Bomonomicon. It just rolls off the tongue really well. Don't you agree?
It does. Does
and
indeed.
You used to have other things roll well off our tongue. Well, you're in tough luck, but you can try it anyway. VGLpodcast@gmail.com with your letters, voicemails, gaming-related topics, or tweet them to us at VGLpodcast. Our lovely, lovely patrons have made this absolute madness possible. You can find out more at patreon.com/VGLpodcast. And our lovely patrons have made our Podbean also possible. VGLpodcast.podbean.com, which hosts links to our RSS feed, all our stuff online, and I do mean all of it. Links to the Discord, or you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, or your podcatcher of choice. I actually downloaded one this week, and I decided to check to see if we were there, and we were. So hey, how about that? And also, how about this? Our intro and outro music is On the Ground by Kim McLeod, and our Discovery Queue music is Doobly Doo by the same artist, and you can find his work at incompetech.com. And
as always, as his lovely music starts to roll across my voice, bye-bye now.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.
So, warning, politics ahead?
Oh, I was holding that yawn in for like 30 seconds, just waiting to do my thing. No, I'm not yawning because of the politics. I'm yawning because I'm getting sleepy. But now I'm good. I'm ready.
Yeah, this has been something that should have happened ages ago. Robin Mueller has agreed to testify publicly before Congress.
Yep. That should have happened like immediately. I don't know what he was thinking with like, oh no, I've done the report and now it's up to them to take care of things. I have done my part. I'm going to step back now.
I think part of it is just that he didn't anticipate just how much obfuscation there was going to be of the literal wording of the report.
Yeah, probably. Mueller, I don't know tons and tons about him. Like, I've done some research.
He's a very straight shooter, and I think he believed in the system a bit too much for how things have degenerated.
Yeah, I almost said he takes things literally, but I think that's the wrong way to say it.
He's a straight shooter. He goes by the letter of the law.
Yeah, he functions within a very narrow purview. So, like, he was told, to kind of sum it up, he was, like, told to do the investigation, so he did that investigation. He passed off everything that wasn't directly related to the specific investigation to several of the other cases that are going on right now. And then he finished that, and he's like, okay, I'm done. I did my part. Now here's your part.
Yeah, but he didn't anticipate Mitch McConnell dragging feet on everything, right?
Yeah. Which, I'm not sure how he thought that his report would be any different from anything else that's been going on, but I don't know. I think you're right. I think he still had a little too much faith in the system.
So it's going to be interesting come mid-July when this happens.
Yeah.
And I think part of this is just going to be, it's sad that this has to happen, especially in the age of literally carrying the Great Library of Alexandria in your pocket, or something that makes that look like a pamphlet. But
yeah, that and then some.
But just getting all the obfuscation out and make it so that it's in plain text, because the Mueller report is a very long legal document, and unless you know how to read it, which I do not, it is very confusing. So those who have just watched, let's call it bullshit news, have just heard, well, the Mueller report has exonerated the president. It said he did nothing wrong. There's no collusion. No. But, they don't cover that. And there was, I'm blanking on who had the town hall that, it was one of the Republican lawmakers that talked about the Mueller report. And people were just flabbergasted because they had only listened to Fox News, so they had heard nothing but what Barr said.
Yeah. Willful ignorance is really
it's my
frustrating.
Willful ignorance is my biggest psychotic fucking hatred. It's okay not to know something. In this day, it's impossible to know everything. It's impossible really to know a little bit about everything. But to say, I don't know and I don't want to know, just pisses me off. I was listening to, I told you I deleted all my podcast or my backlog of podcasts and re-download everything. I'm very close to just dropping the Penn Jillette podcast because he was talking about how Bill Nye was wrong. And it wasn't, factual or anything. He was talking about an interview Bill Nye had, talking about essentially doing science yourself. And the one that he gets asked the most often that people could easily do is, does hot water freeze faster than room temperature water or cold water? Well, he said, do the experiment yourself. And Penn Jillette went off about it, saying, well, just give the answer. That's not the point he was trying to make. But
Yeah.
I realize Pendulette has started to go down the crazy hole a lot.
I haven't kept up with Penn in a while.
Ever since he went on the diet and got a guru, and no, I'm not joking, he's gone more and more into the health alternative area, which has a lot of pseudoscience. I mean, his diet would have killed you. It's basically baked potatoes.
Yeah, that would have killed me.
No salt, no nothing. Just potatoes. It's the Mark Watney diet. And no, I'm not joking. If it's not that, it's pretty close to it. He doesn't even get ketchup. Which is just sad, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just... I'm not sure what to do with him anymore. To be fair, I also don't listen to a lot of his stuff anymore because he brings on a lot of health experts, if you get my drift.
Yeah, I think I get your drift.
And it's starting to get a little... Why don't you just tell me to hold a crystal and be done with it?
Well, that sucks. I always liked Penn as sort of this...
skeptical voice.
Yeah. Skeptical voice and, a very realistic person.
Maybe I'm reading too much into it. I don't know. But it just feels like, Pendulette has really changed.
Is this the Sunday School podcast? Or has he got okay. I should give it a listen at some point just to see.
Especially some of the newer ones.
Probably 2 or 3 years since I've listened to an episode. But I should go check it out just to see how much it's changed since the last time I listened to it.
Oh, it'll be a culture shock for you. If you haven't listened to it in years, it's going to be very different. Especially if you pick one of the ones where he starts bringing on some of his buddies. Let's see.
Yeah, the last time I listened was before we moved, so that would have been 2.5 years ago at least.
Yeah, I'm actually bringing up my podcatcher, or the one on the computer at least. No, I don't want to download a new version. Update podcast. So, let's see. He brings on a comedian. This is part 2 of a podcast that I don't have the part 1 of. On street cred, saving money on clothes, reading drugs, and emotional astronauts. So, yeah, that's a thing, huh?
Yep.
Let's see. Penn family tour of Newfoundland. Teller doesn't get along with Cobblestone, and David Copperfield makes them nervous. So that may actually be an interesting one. That's not full of hippie goodness. Let's see where view all episodes. Here we go. Let's see. Telling the Tanked. Sexual harassment at the Hulk. Juggling accents and a lesson in consciousness with Tim Jensen, which I have no idea who that is. But you could see where I'm going with it, huh?
Yeah.
Sad, huh?
Yeah, but I guess it happens sometimes. People change. Mm-hmm. I think it's time to wrap it up though, because I need to get ready for bed. Unfortunately, my vacation is over.
Yeah, time for pumpkins.
Gotta go back to work tomorrow. Indeed.
Good thing you're well rested, so you had a little extra time tonight.
Indeed. But, bye-bye.